If I hadn't have opened the door that night, I might have survived the week alone. I arrived at the cabin late in the afternoon. The sky was rumbling with dark clouds. My mother had just passed away, and I needed time away from everyone. The forest surrounding the cabin was vast and silent. The isolation was intense, but that's exactly why I chose this place. The sky was rumbling with dark clouds. That night, the storm hit. The wind howled, lashing at the trees and shaking the windows. The thunder cracked so loudly I thought it might split the roof. Lying in bed with a heavy heart, memories of my mother raced through my mind. Suddenly, I heard a knock. At first, I thought it was just the tree branches, but soon the knocking changed into thudding. Someone was desperately hitting my door with their fists. A little nervous, I swung my legs off the bed, my mind struggling to understand who could be at this hour. I thought I was the only one here. I opened the door and found a man, soaked to the bone. His hair was clinging to his forehead. Bloodstains on his shirt were so big that it didn't go unnoticed. He looked like he'd been through hell. Fumbling in fear, he said,
"My wife, we crashed near the creek. She's hurt, unconscious. This was the only house with lights on."
I didn't hesitate. Grabbing my raincoat and flashlight, I followed him into the night. We reached the wreckage just by the creek. The car skidded off the road and into a shallow ditch. Inside, a woman lay unconscious, blood oozing from her head. She wasn't moving. My chest tightened, and without a word, the man and I pulled her from the wreckage and carried her back to the cabin. I disinfected her wound, bandaged it as best as I could, and tucked her into my bed. The man changed into my dry clothes. With a storm raging outside, the cabin must have felt like a rescue to the poor guy. I poured us both a glass of wine, trying to ease the tension that hung in the air. I broke the silence. How did the accident happen? The man took a sip, and then his story began. He said they were visiting her parents. The more he spoke, I started seeing inconsistencies in his story. His words seemed to drift, and his eyes flickered with confusion as if he couldn't remember simple details. Maybe he's traumatized by the accident, I thought. "I need rest," he suddenly said, rising from his chair. He walked into the bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room. I felt a growing unease, but I tried to brush it off. I locked the front door and settled on the couch, hoping to get some sleep. I don't recall the exact time, but I felt hot breathe over my face. My eyes snapped open. A woman was standing over me. I realized it was the wife of that man. Her hair was still damp, clinging to her pale face, her eyes wide and unblinking. I nearly screamed, but she quickly pressed her hand over my mouth.
"Please, don't scream,"
she begged, her breath hot against my ear. I nodded, frozen with fear. Asked, "Do you want me to call your husband? Are you feeling okay?" She leaned in close, her voice shaking as she spoke.
He's not my husband."
I stared at her in disbelief, my heart pounding in my chest. "What?"
"Call the cops,"
she muttered in a shaken voice. I grabbed my phone, but there was no signal. The storm must have knocked out the tower. Panic bubbled up in me. "We need to get to the police station," I whispered.
"He has a knife,"
she murmured. I nodded grimly, realizing the nightmare. My car keys were in the bedroom with the man. With my heart in my throat, I cracked open the bedroom door, my pulse hammering in my ears. The man was asleep, his breathing slow and steady. His damp clothes were scattered around the room, and there, on the nightstand, were the keys, gleaming faintly in the dim light. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, every footfall a potential alarm. The floor creaked beneath my feet. I froze. The man shifted in his sleep, groaning softly, but thankfully he didn't wake. I held my breath as I tiptoed toward the nightstand, my hand shaking as I reached for the keys. Suddenly, the man rolled over, and my heart nearly stopped. I ducked, my entire body tense, my hand clenching the keys. The man exhaled sharply, but mercifully, he didn't wake. I crept backward, every muscle screaming, and shut the door behind me with a soft click. I grabbed the woman's hand, and together we bolted for the front door. I unlocked it, and we ran blindly into the storm, sprinting for the car. The drive was a blur. The rain lashed at the windshield, and the wipers struggled to keep up with the downpour. The woman sobbed quietly beside me, her breath hitching in the darkness. I didn't stop until I saw the flickering lights of the county police station. The officers took her statement. One of them made a call for backup, and they raced to the cabin. But the man was gone. No sign of him anywhere. No struggle, just the woman's blood, dried on my bedsheets, and a broken wine glass. The next morning, an officer sat me down. "He's a known stalker, Robert Walsh," the officer said. "Escaped custody 2 weeks ago. You're lucky to be alive." The woman thanked me, and her family thought I did some heroic deed that night. But honestly, I did what a sensible human being would have done. I pray to God every single day that the man gets caught. I've been driving trucks for 15 years. You get used to the weird shit. Gas stations at 3 a.m., lot lizards, addicts wandering the parking lots. But what happened at that 7-Eleven last month still keeps me up at night. I was on hour 20 of what should have been a 14-hour haul, popping caffeine pills, blasting metal, slapping myself, anything to stay awake. My bladder was about to explode when I spotted this 7-Eleven store, standing like this sad little beacon in the middle of nowhere. The parking lot had just one car, a rusted-out Civic plastered with stickers about government mind control. Perfect. Exactly what I needed at 3:17 a.m., some tweaker working the register. The bell chimed as I walked in. Behind the counter stood this rail-thin dude, maybe mid-20s, staring at his phone. He didn't look up, just stood there with this know-it-all smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Bathroom?" I asked. He pointed to the back, still fixated on his screen. His fingers looked wrong somehow, too long, joints bending at angles that made my stomach turn. The nails were chewed raw, and dried blood had caked around the cuticles. I chalked it up to exhaustion and headed toward the restroom. The floor was sticky, making that sick peeling sound with each step. The whole place reeked of burnt coffee and bleach, and something rotten. Inside the bathroom, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering like a strobe. 2 stalls, one urinal crusted with God knows what. I locked myself in the first one, my knees practically touching the door. I was getting down with my business when I heard slow breathing. It was coming from the next stall over. Not normal breathing. This wet, rasping sound like someone drowning from the inside out. "Sorry, man," I mumbled, embarrassed someone was listening to me piss. No answer, just that breathing. For a second, everything went quiet. "Hello?" I called out. The breathing has stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I finished quickly and stepped out, ready to get the hell out of there. The faucet was dripping, each drop hitting the stained porcelain with a rhythmic ping that seemed to get louder. I turned the tap to splash some water on my face. The mirror in front of me faced all the stalls behind. As I leaned forward, I caught something in the reflection. Movement in the right beside mine, from where I heard the breathing few seconds back. In the reflection, I could see fingers, impossibly long, gray-white fingers, curling around the edge of the stall door. I froze, watching as a figure began to emerge in the reflection. The cashier, but he looked total psycho this time. His eyes wide, shoulders hunched at an impossible angle. The smile looked 10 times more sinister, and he was drooling like some mad dog about to snap. I hurriedly lunged for the door. It wouldn't budge. The handle turned, but a force seemed to block it. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Suffocating darkness took over. The smell of rotten meat just kept choking the air around. "Did I scare you?" It was right against my ear. A cold finger grazed my nape. "No one stops here anymore. I had to do something fun." A phone screen lit up, illuminating his face inches from mine. His eyes were dark, pupils so dilated they looked like black holes sucking in all the light. I slammed my elbow back, connecting with something solid. He grunted, but he didn't release me. His fingers dug into my shoulders with impossible strength.
Don't leave.
He whined like a baby.
I'm so lonely.
In panic, I grabbed the metal trash can and swung it at his head. It connected with a sickening crack. He staggered back, releasing me. I turned the handle harder, but the door wouldn't budge. He was still behind me. I could hear the wet, skittering noise. I peeped over my shoulder to see the cashier crawling toward me on all fours, moving impossibly fast. His head hung at an unnatural angle where I'd hit him, but that smile never faltered.
Lonely, I'm so lonely. I've nobody to call my own,
he sang, making a sad face. I threw my full weight against the door, increasing the strength with each try, until finally it gave way. I sprinted through the 7-Eleven store like some prey dodging the predator, the cashier's giggles following me all the way until it turned to screams of rage. He was cursing me to come back, but I didn't look back, just ran to my truck. As I fumbled with my keys, I glanced back. He stood in the doorway, perfectly still except for his head, which tilted sideways at an angle that should have snapped a human's neck. The fluorescent light above him flickered, casting his elongated shadow across the parking lot. He raised one hand and spread his fingers, too many fingers, in a wave.
"Do come again!"
he yelled, like it was some casual night of fun for him. I was lucky that the roads were mostly empty that night, otherwise I definitely would have met with accident. A week later after this incident, I saw news coverage on a local media channel. They're talking about a man who worked at a 7-Eleven store. Many customers kept complaining about the bad stench in the bathroom of the 7-Eleven for days, when finally cops had to intervene. They found dead animal carcasses stuffed in the vents and storage spaces. Upon questioning, they arrested the employee who worked there. It was the same guy from that night. When the cops asked him why killed stray animals and kept their dead bodies inside the store, he replied he didn't like being alone. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when the call came. It was Mrs. Gallagher, my daughter's homeroom teacher. While sobbing, she told me the school was in lockdown as a mad high schooler got in with a gun. The mug fell from my hand and shattered on the kitchen tile. I grabbed my keys and raced out the door, already dialing 911. I ignored the traffic laws. The only thing in my head was Bloom, my daughter, my only child. She was all that was left of my wife Claire, who died 5 years ago. I'd raised Bloom alone, shielding her from everything, and now she was still in a school with a kid with a gun. The outside of the school was in total chaos. Police cruisers, ambulances, and fire trucks blocked the road with their flashing lights illuminating the pavement with violent streaks of red and blue. Officers in tactical gear yelled orders into the radio. Parents were gathered at the barricade yelling for their children. I shoved through the crowd, barely able to breathe. "Derek, step back!" It was Officer Brady from my neighborhood. I grabbed his sleeve, my voice raw.
"My daughter's in there. She has asthma. She could suffocate. Let me in."
He shook his head firmly.
"We have it under control. You need to stay back." "You don't understand," I hissed. "If she panics, she could collapse. She needs me."
Brad's expression didn't soften.
"We'll get her out. You just have to let us do our job."
For a moment, I stood there, fists clenched and my body shook with helpless rage. I could hear the cries of parents ringing in my ears, but I was not going to be still while my daughter was in there. I slipped back away from the crowd and gingerly walked around to the back of the building. I discovered the loading dock, which was completely empty. There were no officers and no barricade. That's when I saw it, a window, slightly open, big enough for me to squeeze through. I didn't hesitate. I pushed the window up, climbed up onto the ledge, and fell inside. My hands stung after the fall, but I didn't care. I was inside the building. The hallway was dark, with flashing emergency alarms projecting dim red lights. The sounds of faint sirens wailed in the background, but were muffled by the heavy silence. I moved slowly, hugging the wall. My breath came fast and shallow. Every step felt too loud. Suddenly, a loud gunshot made my ears ring. Down the corridor, windows shattered, sending glass cascading onto the tile. My legs locked for half a second, but then I moved, faster now, toward Bloom's classroom. I knew precisely where it was. Turn left, room 214. I spotted her through the window. She was crouched under a desk with 4 other children. Her little fingers held onto her inhaler, but she was gasping too much to use it currently. Her lips were pale, and her chest rose and fell in small, short breaths. I didn't care if I exposed myself. I opened the door. "Bloom!" I hurried to her and got to my knees. Her eyes widened in recognition, but there was no voice. Her fingers were fumbling with the inhaler. "Breathe, not baby, just like we practice." I could hear the shake in my voice. Nice and slow. Her hands were too shaky. I took her small hands and guided the inhaler to her lips. "Take a deep breath. Hold. Okay, count to 3. That's my girl." Behind me, a boy maybe 10 years old pulled at my sleeve, barely supported by his voice. "He's coming." I stiffened. Footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberately. The shadow appeared first, stretching against the wall. Then he stepped into view. A kid, probably no more than 17 or 18. His face was still a mess of zits, but his eyes were empty. He was carrying a shotgun in his hands. His eyes were flicking to the classroom door. He couldn't see me yet. "Move, Derek. Now." I shoved Bloom into the wall, leaning against her. He lifted the gun and fired. The tube lights overhead shattered, exploding glass. The kids screamed, crying under their desks. Bloom was holding on to me, squeezing my arm with her fingernails. I didn't think. I lunged. "Hey!" I yelled, grabbing a chair and throwing it at him. The metal legs smashed into his ribs and he stumbled backwards, the shotgun falling out of his hands. "Run!" I screamed. The children took off, gripping one another, sobbing and finding their way to the hallway. Bloom's legs weren't holding her, and her air was short, but she still moved, breath short and quick. "Go, baby! Don't stop!" I shouted. The assailant regained his footing, charging me into the wall. I hit my head on the plaster and my eyesight blurred. He was on top of me, fists flying. I could taste blood. My ribs were screaming at me. My fingers closed around something cold sometime during the fight. The shotgun. I squeezed it and swung it wholeheartedly. Bone broke. Blood splattered. He sagged onto the tile, moaning. I outstretched my arm as I rolled off the floor. My ribs were writhing, and my knees wanted to fold in on themselves, but I forced myself to move. As I staggered out of the building, the first thing I saw was Bloom in Officer Brad's arms, crying uncontrollably with her face buried in his chest. "Bloom!" I yelped, my voice cracking. Her head snapped up. She broke free from Brad's hold and ran toward me, arms outstretched. I held on to her, gripping her so tightly. I worried that I might break her. I felt her tears soak my shirt. I kissed her forehead, again and again, swallowing back my own tears. "I'm here, baby. I have you. You're safe." She was alive. She was safe. And so was I. The Carters' house was the kind of place you'd see in a magazine. Glass walls, sharp angles, perched on a hill like it was looking down on the rest of the world. It was beautiful, sure, but cold, empty. The kind of place where you'd feel like a ghost even when you were alive. I took the job because I had no choice. Tuition was due and my bank account was a joke. When they offered triple my usual rate, I didn't ask questions. I should have.
"Ethan's already fed and bathed,"
Mrs. Carter said, her diamond earrings catching the light as she tossed her purse over her shoulder. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes.
"We'll be back by midnight."
And then they were gone, leaving me alone in that glass castle with their 8-year-old son. Ethan was quiet for a kid his age. He didn't argue when I told him it was bedtime, just climbed into bed, pulled the covers up to his chin, and stared at me with those big, unblinking eyes.
He always comes when they leave, he whispered as I reached for the light. He likes girls like you.
I froze.
Who?
No matter how much I prodded, Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he simply laid there, closing his eyes. Somewhat anxious, I returned to the living room and tried to focus on my textbook, but every creak of the house made me jump. At exactly 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. My heart slammed against my ribs. On the security monitor, a man stood at the door. Tailored suit, perfect hair, smiling directly into the camera like he knew I was watching. "Hi, Lisa," he said when I pressed the intercom. His voice was smooth, too smooth. "I'm Daniel, Ethan's uncle. I've already told Rachel. We'd just grab some files from the study and leave." My stomach churned.
I wasn't told anyone would be coming.
"Call her if you want," he said, still smiling. "She'll tell you it's fine." I did. Mrs. Carter answered on the second ring.
Oh, Daniel. He's family. It's fine.
She said, laughing, but her voice was tight. I opened the door against my screaming instincts. Daniel was taller than I expected. "Thank you," he said as he brushed past me, arm grazing mine. "This won't take long." But it did. Minutes stretched into an eternity. When I finally went to check on him, he was sitting in the study, not really doing anything, just staring.
Found everything you need?
I asked, my voice shaking. Daniel slowly stood up, stalking closer. "That's a lovely scent you're wearing." He sniffed, grinning. "Reminds me of someone." My blood ran cold. "You must be a student," he said, taking a step closer. "College is expensive, isn't it?" I nodded, backing away. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick stack of cash, tossing it onto the desk. $15,000, he said, licking his lips. "All for a night with me." I couldn't breathe.
I think you should leave.
"Don't be difficult," he said, stepping closer. "We both know you need the money."
Get out, or I'll call the police.
I said, reaching for my phone. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with crushing force. "No, you won't," he hissed. I tried yanking my arm back and screamed, but his grip tightened. "Scream all you want, Lisa. No one's coming. They never do. You're mine." I didn't think. I couldn't. I drove my knee up hard, aiming for anything, and bolted. The front door wouldn't budge. The security panel blinked red. Wrong code. Behind me, Daniel laughed, low and terrible. I ran to the kitchen, yanking open drawers until I found a knife. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, like he was enjoying the chase. "7 girls before you," he boasted. "None of them were missed for days." I pointed the knife at him, my hand shaking.
Stay back.
He smiled, stalking forward. The last one had dark hair too. I threw the knife, not to kill, just to distract, and bolted up the stairs. Ethan's room was empty.
Ethan?
I cried, terrified. A small hand grabbed mine from the closet. Ethan's eyes were wide, his voice barely audible.
"He always does that," he whispered. "He comes when they leave."
Heavy footsteps echoed on the stairs. Daniel's voice followed, sing-song and mocking. "I can smell your fear, little girl." I grabbed the landline by Ethan's bed, my fingers fumbling as I dialed 911. The dispatcher spoke from the other side, but before I could reply, Daniel busted into the room, blood dripping from his shoulder where the knife had grazed him. In his hand was a zip tie. "You stupid, stupid girl!" he growled, lunging for me. Struggle ensured as he jumped on me. We both rolled out of the room, moving to the stairs. I kept punching and kicking him, but he was too strong. He dragged me down the rest of the stairs and pounced me on the hard floor. Just when I thought it's over for me, I heard cop cars. Daniel stopped and I noticed the color from his face fade away.
Who the hell called the cops?
He screamed in pain mixed with anger.
"I did! I hate you! And I hate Mommy, Daddy too!"
I saw Ethan standing on the stairs. He was crying, but when the police dragged Daniel away, he kept yelling how he'd get bail in no time. 6 missing babysitters over 3 years. The Carters were arrested as accomplices. Little Ethan was allotted to foster care while Daniel was given life imprisonment. But the real justice was served when he was found unconscious in a cell a week into his sentence, brain hemorrhaging from an undetected injury. He survived, but doctors say he'll never walk again. I visit Ethan time to time. He still doesn't understand that he saved my life. One day, when he gets older, I bet he'll be proud of himself. I still remember the sun spilling through the windows as I straightened the guest room, folding the last of the freshly washed sheets. My hands were trembling slightly, a mixture of excitement and nerves. Today was the day. My first foster child was arriving. I stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror, brushing down my shirt. My mother would have been so proud of me for taking in a child in need. After she passed, I felt lost, alone, but helping a child was supposed to be healing, right? When the knock came, I exhaled sharply and opened the door. Ronnie Bateman stood on the porch, holding a tattered plush bear with a missing eye. He was smaller than I expected for a 10-year-old, pale and thin, with unkempt brown hair falling over his eyes. The social worker introduced us, but Ronnie never spoke a word. He simply stared at me with unsettling stillness. The moment the door shut behind us, he finally spoke. "You have pretty hair," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. It should have been a sweet compliment, but the way he smiled afterward made me feel strangely cold. I made grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch, something simple that most kids would enjoy. Ronnie didn't touch his food. Instead, he stared at me, unblinking, dragging his knife across his plate slowly, making a faint scraping sound that set my teeth on edge.
Not hungry?
I asked, forcing a warm smile. Without a word, he suddenly shoved his plate onto the floor, sending shards of ceramic and crumbs skittering across the tiles. He glared at me with a flash of something dark in his eyes. "I don't want this," he muttered coldly. I knelt beside him, trying to keep calm.
Hey, it's okay. You don't have to eat it. What do you want to do?
His lips curled into a grin, a slow, deliberate smile that didn't reach his eyes.
Let's play hide and seek.
Thinking it would lighten the mood, I agreed.
Okay. I'll hide first.
I said, masking my unease. I tiptoed through the house and slipped into the hallway closet, grinning slightly at the stillness of it all. For a moment, it felt almost normal, but as I pressed my ear to the door, I heard something that sent a chill through me. Soft, deliberate footsteps, but there was something else, the faint metallic scrape of a blade dragging across the wall.
Caroline,
His voice sing-songed through the house. I'm gonna find you. I held my breath, willing myself to believe I was imagining it, but when I peeked through the narrow crack of the door, my stomach turned to ice. Ronnie was holding a large kitchen knife. His small hands clutched the handle tightly, his knuckles white.
Come out, wherever you are.
He crooned softly, dragging the tip of the knife along the hallway wall, leaving shallow scratches. I slowly pressed the closet door open, creeping out barefoot, careful not to make a sound. My heart slammed against my chest as I moved down the hallway toward the back door. Suddenly, a tiny hand grabbed my wrist from behind. I spun around, and Ronnie's face was inches from mine, his grin wide, his teeth bared in a grotesque, almost animalistic snarl.
Gotcha!
He giggled and slashed at me. The blade missed my stomach by mere inches, but it tore through my shirt, grazing my skin. I gasped in pain and sprinted into the kitchen. My bare feet skidded across the floor as I yanked open drawers, searching for something, anything I could use. But Ronnie was fast, too fast. He came barreling around the corner, slamming into me with surprising force, knocking me into the counter. The knife sliced into my shoulder, making me cry out.
You're not fast enough!
He sneered, his eyes wild. I stumbled backward, gripping my bleeding shoulder. My hands shook as I grabbed the heavy ceramic fruit bowl from the counter and swung it at him. It smashed against his arm, making him drop the knife. But instead of crying out in pain, he laughed.
You're fun,
he whispered, blood trickling down his arm.
Wanna play again?
I bolted for the front door, but he was right behind me, his small footsteps slamming against the hardwood floor. I yanked the door open, only for him to slam it shut with shocking strength, nearly crushing my hand.
No leaving,
he hissed, his face only inches from mine. Desperate, I shoved him back and sprinted toward the laundry room. I barely managed to slam the door shut and lock it. I panted against the wall, my heart threatening to explode out of my chest. Through the crack in the door, I could see his small, bloodied hand running over the handle.
You can't hide forever,
he whispered. I frantically dialed 911 with my blood-slicked fingers, barely able to speak.
Please, my foster son, he's trying to kill me.
But before I could give them my full address, the door burst open. Ronnie stood there, his face blank, emotionless. He cocked his head slowly and strolled toward me. I scrambled backward, throwing whatever I could at him. A detergent bottle, towels, anything. He lunged on top of me, his small hands shockingly strong, pinning me to the floor. He raised the knife high above his head, his eyes alight with something vile. I screamed in desperation.
You don't have to be like your father.
But he simply smiled.
I'm not like my father,
he whispered, his lips curling into a sinister grin.
He didn't kill anyone.
I froze, my breath caught in my throat.
I did,
he sneered. Every time he brought home a woman after Mom died, I didn't like them, so I played with them, with knives. He only confessed so they wouldn't take me away. His eyes glimmered with triumph, feeding on my horror. He swung the knife downward. I twisted my body just in time, the blade barely missing my throat, instead slicing into the floorboards. I kicked him hard in the chest, sending him flying backward. His head slammed against the wall, but he scrambled back to his feet, giggling.
You're good at this,
he taunted. Blood poured from my shoulder, and my limbs trembled from exhaustion. But I managed to grab a broken lamp base and swung it. It cracked against his skull, sending him crumpling to the floor. I stumbled to my feet, my vision swimming, and kicked the knife away from his hand. I sprinted to the front door just as the police arrived. The officers tackled Ronnie to the ground. He didn't struggle. He simply smirked at me from the back of the squad car, his eyes wide with glee.
See you soon, Caroline,
he whispered, lips curling into a grin.
You're my favorite playmate till now.
The paramedics wrapped my bleeding shoulder, but I barely noticed the pain. I stared into the distance, the weight of the horrifying truth sinking in. The wrong man was going to die for the murders, and somewhere deep down, I knew Ronnie would find another game to play. It was my first day in Western Hill medical care, and I drove up the mountain, reaching minutes before dawn. The hospital looked like it had seen it all. The head nurse showed me around and briefed me on my responsibilities. She was showing me the different wards when another caregiver came rushing. He looked young, but very frightened. Catching his panting breath, he told the head nurse about some patient who had just had an episode of incontinence. The head nurse asked the name of the patient, and the minute the caregiver uttered her name, I could see lines forming on her forehead. Both of them discussed for a minute who will attend to this patient, because the one who takes care of her is on leave. Thinking it was my chance to shine on the very first day, I recommended myself. Are you sure? The head nurse asked me. I chuckled as if it was a very silly question. I've had training on attending old and disabled patients, so I know what I'm doing. The head nurse gestured for the caregiver to take me to the patient so I could give her a bath and a change of clothes. As I started to follow the caregiver, the head nurse called out to me and warned me. She told me to be careful. On our way to the patient's room, I casually asked the caregiver about her, and he said the patient is a bit weird. On normal days, she keeps to herself, but sometimes she can get violent, which is why they always keep her physically restrained.
She's been through a lot. Her abusive husband tortured her for years, until one day he came back home drunk and beat her badly. And then he killed himself too. If you ask me, she's way better here than she was with him.
The caregiver exhaled, and I realized things are about to get pretty serious around here. We stopped outside a small room. Inside the room, I could see a bed with its white sheets covered in fecal matter. A smell of urine, waste, and perspiration hit my nostrils right away. I covered my nose, muttering,
That's some strong smell.
On the bed sat this frail, average-height woman with her hands tied to her body. She had long, stringy gray hair and an expressionless face. Her eyes were wide like a night owl.
Dorothy, this is Linjin. She's going to help you, okay? Can you promise me you'll cooperate?
Dorothy nodded her head up and down, then shifted her gaze towards me. She didn't speak, didn't blink. The caregiver pulled out this wheelchair and I placed a towel on it. Together, we helped Dorothy get down from the bed and take a sit on the chair. I was instructed to unlock her handcuffs only during the shower. Once done, I shouldn't wait a second to put her back in restraints. I've dealt with violent patients in the past, so I was confident I would handle it. Also, Dorothy was very skinny, and I'm stronger than her in every aspect. I watched the caregiver leave to attain other duties. When I looked down, my eyes met with Dorothy's. She was staring at me. I gave an awkward smile and took her to the shower room. I turned on the warm water and began gently rinsing her arms.
You'll feel better after this, Dorothy. Nice and clean, okay?
No answer. Her eyes were open, but empty, like windows with no curtains, just darkness behind them. I knelt to rinse her leg when Dorothy whispered,
It's still inside the wall.
I looked up, confused.
What did you say?
I asked. She tilted her head at an unnatural angle, her wet hair clinging to her face.
It helped me slice his throat in one go.
She murmured.
Do you know how people bleed when their veins are cut?
I took a cautious step back, my heart picking up pace.
Dorothy? Are you alright?
She smiled, blinking her eyes like a robot, but it wasn't a smile of relief. It was something sinister.
If I had it with me, I would have cut you all open.
The lights above flickered. My breath caught in my throat. The bathroom had no windows, just a single fluorescent light overhead.
I think we're done here.
Then she started screaming. She thrashed in the chair, shaking the handles violently. Her face twisted with pure rage. Her screams were blood-curdling. I froze in shock. The caregiver came rushing in, but those 5 minutes felt like forever. Dorothy was sedated and taken back to her room. Later, the caregiver tried to console me. He said it happens, that patients sometimes lash out. But when I told him what Dorothy said, he went pale. I asked what was wrong, and that's when he told me. The murder weapon was never found, but based on the clean, deep cut in her husband's neck, authorities believed it was a scalpel, something swift and sharp. It's been months now, and I still work here. But ever since that day, I haven't slept the same. Because part of me wonders, is that weapon still hidden somewhere? Inside some walls? Because I don't think Dorothy's lying. Do you? We got there just before noon. When I pulled up in front of the cabin, Jason hardly lifted his head from his phone. The Airbnb sat completely by itself in a thick stand of pine and fog. It was the perfect type of place to book for solace. I turned off the engine and the silence ate us alive. You know there's no Wi-Fi, right? He said.
That's the point.
He rolled his eyes, got out, and lit a cigarette that he claimed he quit months ago. I watched the smoke curl toward the gray skies. All I needed was a day. Just one day to feel he still loved me deep down somewhere. Once we got in, I started unpacking. Jason scrolled on his phone and sulked. Weeks had gone by without him touching me. I stopped asking why. At 1 o'clock, we were sitting across the dining table from one another in silence. The air between us crackled with all the old tensions that hadn't been resolved. It felt like we had a dense, invisible forest of unspoken feelings between us. He finished his third glass of wine and looked at me. You've been quiet, he said.
Just thinking.
I replied. He smirked. Wow, new hobby, huh? He taunted, like he was the smartest in the whole wide world.
Why can't you just be nice for a date, Jason? Is it too much to ask?
I can't be all lovey-dovey in this crappy Airbnb. He pushed the table while standing. The glass on it fell to the floor, breaking. The fight started the way they always did. I should have left when I had the option, he said angrily, and threw his glass into the sink, shattering into pieces just like our marriage.
Why didn't you?
I asked calmly. He gave me a blank look. Because I wanted you to break first. Jason stormed out. He said that he needed some air. He left without a jacket and no flashlight. He just walked away into the tree line like the coward he was. I didn't follow him. I cleaned up the glass that he smashed against the sink. I sat down. I finished Jason's drink. And I waited. It didn't take long to discover what I already knew. Jason's phone was tucked away behind the firewood stack. Screen still locked. He had never changed his passwords. Jason had always thought of himself as smarter than everyone else. That was his downfall, his flaw. That and underestimating me. The messages were all there, unmistakable. Ugly little truths packed in emojis and promises made late at night. Text to a woman he only saved as L. These messages weren't one-time flings. They weren't a regret. They were the ongoing, regular, and intimate reality of his life. And then there was the one that burned the hottest. I'm done. She's pathetic. I'll tell her after the weekend. He was ready to leave me. For her. All I had given. After all I had done, he was just going to throw me away like I was some old, worn-out doll. No, that was not going to happen to me. He thought I was still soft, still love-worn and broken. He didn't know I had already let go of love and replaced it with tactics. I went to the fireplace and picked up the heavy antique metal vase the Airbnb owners used as decoration, held it in my lap, feeling the weight of it, imagining it connecting with his skull, not to kill, just to remind. And then I waited. When Jason returned, he stepped into the doorway, dripping with sweat and smirking like he still had a chance to talk his way out of it.
Lena,
I stood, took one step forward, and swung. The metal vase struck him just above the temple, a clean, brutal hit. His eyes widened for a heartbeat, then glassed over as his body collapsed to the floor like a marionette with its strings cut. I knelt beside him and checked his pulse. Weak, but there. That was enough. Dragging him across the hardwood floor took more effort than I expected. He was dead weight, literally and metaphorically. I heaved, pushed, and pulled. Out the back door, down the path, and through the trees. The waterfall thundered behind the cabin. That 500-foot drop had been the real reason I chose this Airbnb. Not the view, not the quiet. The fall. The kind of place that made bodies vanish. I dragged Jason right to the edge, where the moss turned slick and the spray hit my face. He groaned, dazed, starting to stir. Perfect timing. I leaned down, brushed his damp hair from his forehead, and whispered into his ear.
This is what you get for betraying me. Goodbye, darling.
Then I pushed. There was no scream, just a wet, brutal silence as his body disappeared into the roaring white below. When it hit, I didn't flinch. The current would carry him for miles. The rocks would strip his face of features. The cold would keep him preserved, unreachable. They'd never find him. I walked back to the cabin, peeled off my soaked clothes, and began the rest of my work. I sliced a neat line across my palm, bruised my shoulder on the corner of the counter, smashed the mirror, and scattered blood across the tile. Then I picked up the phone. Only one call needed to be made. I didn't care that there was barely any service. No Wi-Fi. This place had always been perfect for what I needed.
My husband...
My voice shook, just enough.
He snapped. He said he couldn't take it anymore. He hit me. He ran into the woods. I think he's going to hurt himself.
They believed me. Of course they did. They sent officers and paramedics. A blanket was draped around my shoulders while I cried into it on cue. I told them about the cheating, the threats, the bruises I'd hidden for months. They promised they'd search for them. They're still searching. When Trevor invited me on a camping trip, I was ready to decline. Trevor and I had been dating for approximately 2 years now, but I'm ready to walk away now. Why? Because he's sleeping with my best friend Cassie. I figured this had to be my moment, the moment I called them both out and broke up with Trevor while still having Cassie and Jordan watch. It was the beginning of summer in Alabama, and while it was warm, it was still a proper temperature for outdoor activities. We got to the campground shortly before sunset. Trevor picked a spot that was slightly back into the trees. All I could think about was it being like a horror movie where the unsuspecting campers are murdered. No one cared about location, but everyone was happy. When the sun set after we had set up camp and everyone began drinking, Jordan turned the speaker he brought to the max volume and started playing songs by Post Malone. Cassie danced like she was auditioning for a rap music video, and Trevor, he barely looked in my direction. I was sitting on a log, gnawing on chicken wings, feeling like a ghost. Then, it happened. A soda can rolled into our circle. Clink, clink. Before we could react, it burst open, releasing a thick cloud of smoke.
Yo! What the?
Jordan coughed.
Is that a smoke bomb?
Cassie shrieked. All went dark. I woke up in a dimly lit room. We four were seated in a semicircle, with our hands tied back with rough, scratchy rope. My head throbbed.
Dude, what the hell just happened?
Jordan groaned.
God, my head's still spinning.
Trevor muttered. And then we heard it, the clapping. A figure stepped out from the shadows, a man standing like an unhinged robot, with a wide grin plastered on his face, as though he had just stepped out of Friday the 13th. "Hello, hello," he said gleefully, arms extended outward. "Welcome to my little party." Cassie immediately began to cry.
Please, please, just let us go. We didn't do anything.
He cocked his head to one side. "Oh, princess, that's the problem. You haven't accomplished anything good yet." Out of nowhere, he revealed a hunting knife and cut Jordan across the arm. Jordan shrieked, jerking against the ropes. Blood soaked into his shirt.
Whoopsie!
The man chuckled.
Silly me.
Trevor squirmed in his seat.
You're insane, bro. Let us go.
The man locked eyes with him. He smiled, walked over, and slowly pressed the tip of the blade against Trevor's cheek. He plunged the knife into Trevor's thigh. Trevor let out a scream that could have woken the entire neighborhood. I simply observed, unperturbed. Cassie now in hysterics, wailing and pleading for mercy. The man turned to me, tilting his head. "And you? You just sit there. You're not scared, sweetheart?" I stared the man down, expressionless.
No.
He blinked, somewhat surprised. "Huh." I let out half a smile.
My life is already a joke. You might as well put me out of my misery.
The man's eyes narrowed with interest. He crouched in front of me, assessing my face. "Ho ho ho! Go on, you've piqued my interest." He wiped the blade against Trevor's jeans again and moved closer. "What's your story, pretty thing?" I turned my gaze towards Cassie and Trevor.
You want to know why I'm not scared?
My voice was low but steady. I looked directly at them.
Because my boyfriend and best friend are screwing each other behind my back.
Trevor's eyes widened.
What?
Cassie's face went pale.
No, she's lying. She's...
Save it, bitch.
I spat. The man whistled.
Wow, plot twist. Didn't see that one coming.
He stood up and clapped his hands once more.
You know what? You're fun. I like you.
He pointed his knife toward Cassie, then Jordan.
Tell you what, I'll let you live, but you gotta help me bury your friends. Deal?
I didn't hesitate.
Deal.
I looked at Jordan.
You knew too, but kept it a secret.
Cassie screamed.
What? No, please. Oh
I didn't flinch. The man grabbed Cassie by the hair, yanked her to the edge of a freshly dug grave, and slashed her throat in one swift motion. Blood sprayed across the dirt as she gurgled and fell into the hole. Her eyes locked onto mine as she choked out her last breath. Next was Jordan. The man repeatedly stabbed him in the chest. By the time he dropped in the pit, his face was hardly recognizable. Trevor was sobbing, shaking like a baby. The man grabbed the collar of his coat and dragged him toward the grave. When the man was about to slice open Trevor's throat, I lunged. I swung the shovel hard against the back of his head. The man teetered and stumbled a few steps, blood rolling down the side of his temple. Before he could react, I swung again, harder, and he fell into the grave. He tried to speak, but I kicked his face, and without another word, I shoved him into the pile of corpses. His body landed with a sickening crunch. I grabbed the shovel and started throwing dirt in the hole. Trevor, still shaking, stared at me wide-eyed.
You saved me.
I didn't say anything.
Oh God, I'm so sorry, babe. I swear, I'll never hurt you again. You saved my life.
He was holding on to me and sobbing into my shoulder. A few minutes later, the cops arrived, and Trevor was still crying while he gave them his statement. I was sitting on the tailgate of the ambulance, ensconced in a blanket and sipping from a water bottle. Trevor dialed his parents, still in shock.
We barely made it out alive.
He wept. As the paramedics tended to him, I turned to the camera the officers were setting up for the press. My lips curled into a smile.
It's not easy fooling a hitman.
I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. I let out a dark chuckle.
But I passed with flying colors.
I keep replaying that moment in my head, the moment when Liam let go of my hand, the moment I should have held on tighter. It was supposed to be a normal Friday, Mr. Carter droning on about quadratic equations while I texted Liam about weekend plans. Just 2 more periods until freedom. No one saw it coming. Ryan had always been strange, quiet, lurking in corners, staring at people for too long, but he was just another weird student at our high school. People made fun of him, but I tried my best to be nice to him. We exchanged smiles a few times in the hallway until Liam told me that he was getting creepy vibes from him, and I stopped looking his way. Then, he was lost in shadows. Until that day, the school intercom came to life. Attention, this is a lockdown. This is not a drill. Please go to the designated safe areas immediately. At first, no one moved. Then I saw Ryan sprinting past our door, a huge knife in his hand. His hands were dripping red. The hunting knife in his grip glistened under the neon lights. But his eyes, God, his eyes, they were completely empty. Black pools that seemed to soak up the light around them. His lips were curved into a smile that gave me goosebumps. Someone was screaming. Mr. Carter rushed to the door.
It's jammed!
He shouted, panicked. Bang! Ryan slammed against the door, laughing, a high, childish giggle that didn't match the blood smeared across his face.
Let me in,
he sang, voice lilting like a twisted nursery rhyme.
Let me in or I'll blow your pretty little heads off.
Liam grabbed my arm.
Noah, help me,
he yelled, dragging a heavy desk toward the door. We slammed it against the frame, just as Ryan's knife slipped through the gap, narrowly missing my eye.
I can smell your fear, Noah, baby.
Ryan sniffed through the crack, inhaling deeply.
It's delicious.
His eye pressed against the small window in the door, bloodshot and unblinking.
I've been practicing for this day, Noah. The others didn't scream enough. I know you'll shriek.
A chill ran down my spine as his tongue darted out, licking blood from his lips. Suddenly, we heard shouts in the hallway. Teachers and security dashed in, momentarily distracting the monster. Ryan stepped back, tilting his head like a curious animal.
Hide and seek,
he whispered.
Ready or not. Now!
Liam hissed, and we yanked the desk away and fled. The hallway was a nightmare. Sprinklers drenched everything, making the floor slippery with pinkish water. Bloody handprints smeared one wall where someone had dragged themselves away. 2 freshmen huddled by the lockers, clutching bleeding wounds.
He cut us and then just watched.
One whimpered.
Said something about loving our pain.
Halfway down the hall, I saw Ryan standing motionless at the other end, knife raised, head tilted at that unnatural angle. He removed his hoodie, revealing a vest covered with wires and bulging packages.
No more running,
he called, voice echoing. Then softer, almost intimate.
I need to see inside you, Noah.
We ran. Liam slipped, crashing into the lockers. Before I could help, Ryan was there, moving unnaturally fast, knife slashing. I swear his feet barely touched the ground. I ripped a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung it, connecting with Ryan's shoulder. He didn't even flinch, just smiled wider.
That tickles,
he giggled, eyes dilating.
Want to see what real pain looks like?
He lunged at Liam, who barely dodged the blade. By then, we had reached the emergency exit. Through its window, red and blue lights flashed. Help was waiting. Liam turned to me, face pale with terror.
You go first,
he said, voice shaking.
No, we're going together.
I grabbed his wrist and he shook his head.
Don't waste time, hurry!
I stepped through the door, cold night air hitting my lungs. I turned back, reaching for Liam, our fingers connecting. That's when I saw Ryan behind him, appearing like a shadow. His eyes met mine as his arm plunged forward.
No!
I screamed. The knife entered Liam's back. His eyes went wide, mouth opening in a silent gasp. Ryan's face transformed with pleasure, eyes rolling back slightly as he twisted the blade. His tongue darted out again, tasting the air like a snake.
Beautiful,
he sighed, as if witnessing something transcendent. The cops were running toward us now, but Ryan wasn't done. The blade flashed again, driving into Liam's side with a wet sucking sound. I couldn't let go of his hand. I couldn't.
Just hold on, don't let go,
I begged. Blood bubbled from Liam's mouth, but somehow he managed to smile.
Live your life, mate,
he whispered, his fingers going slack in mine. And then he let go. I screamed as his hand slipped from mine, as his body crumpled onto the concrete. The cops tackled Ryan, who didn't resist. He just stared at me over their shoulders, smiling that unnatural smile.
I'll see you in your dreams, Noah,
he said, voice carrying impossibly over the chaos. Hours later, I sat on the curb outside the school, wrapped in a shock blanket. Someone had washed Liam's blood from my hands, but I could still feel it, sticky between my fingers. The paramedics couldn't save Liam. He was gone before they even closed the ambulance doors. As dawn broke, I stared at his bloodied school ID, trying to focus on his smile rather than Ryan's words. Sometimes at night, I still feel Liam's hand slipping from mine. I wake up grasping at air, trying to hold on tighter this time, but I can't. And somewhere in juvenile detention, Ryan waits. The guards report he doesn't sleep, just sits perfectly still, staring at walls, smiling. Sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, I swear I can feel him watching me through the miles between us. And in my dreams, he whispers that he's coming for me, that he wants to finish what he started, that he needs to see inside me. As a solo hiker, I finished the last mile with a sort of breathless excitement. The trail wound up through the trees, opening at the top into a desolate, beautiful quiet. The wind, the needle of the pines, and the long drop past the cliff edge made me choose the spot at my campsite. I was at the perfect place to witness the full sunrise next morning. By the time the sun dropped behind the distant ridge, I was done setting my tent and starting a fire. Sharpening a sturdy twig with my knife, I started roasting my steak on the fire. The sky above me soon got filled with billions of stars. I had a great time for next 4 hours straight. Around 10:30 p.m., I zipped myself into my sleeping bag, imagining the dreamy sunrise I'm about to witness in some hours. I fell asleep. At exactly 2:36 a.m., I woke up, but not because of the sunrise. There were voices outside. Then, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps followed by dragging sound.
It's getting heavier with each step. We should have buried it down somewhere.
Shut up. You always take the easy way out.
I didn't move or even breathe. My heart started hammering in my chest, louder than their steps. I slid forward, inch by inch, until I could peek through the half-zipped gap on my tent. 2 people were out there, a man and a woman. They must be in their mid-30s or so. They were dragging something heavy, like a duffel bag.
We're almost close to the edge.
The woman whispered.
Careful now.
The man answered, low and quiet.
Spinal cord's already shattered. One good toss and he's gone.
I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Only one clear thought kept rising in my head. Are they dumping a body? They suddenly stopped. The woman looked up and scanned the trees. Her eyes seemed to linger. She said,
You sure we're alone?
The man cocked his head to the side, almost lazily. Thought I'd heard something. I flinched back into the tent like a reflex, hands over my mouth. I froze there, skin crawling, heart thudding so loud it felt like they'd hear it. The air felt thicker suddenly, dense, wrong. A twig snapped outside, closer than before. I prayed to God that the couple didn't see my tent. After a slight pause, the dragging sound began once again, and I felt my blood flowing again. I peeked again from the gap and saw the couple facing their back at me. Taking this opportunity, I slowly crawled out and quickly moved behind a boulder. Even though my tent was behind a tree, I knew it's not safe anymore to stay inside. From there, I watched them move to the cliff's edge, lifting the bag together. They didn't hesitate for a second, just heaved and let it fall. A wet thud echoed in the valley. It probably fell into the river, and once again, silence prevailed. The man and the woman looked down like little kids throwing rocks at a stream. Then they looked at each other. In that glistening moonlight, I watched them smile. Then, as if he'd felt me watching, he turned to the boulder and our eyes locked for a fraction of seconds.
I know you're watching us,
he said, calm and casual. I didn't wait. My legs moved before my mind caught up, and I started to run. I bolted uphill, pushing through the trees. My boots hit dirt hard. Branches scraped my arms and face, but I didn't stop. Behind me, flashlights blinked on, cutting through the dark. The woman's voice came after me.
Wait, it's not what you think. We've a lot of money. Just talk to us. Stop!
I didn't look back. I cut left into thicker trees, hoping to lose them in terrain that they didn't know. But deep down, I knew that they knew these woods way better than me. I suddenly tripped and went down hard, mud in my mouth, knees torn apart, but I got up again. I'm not letting these killers dump a second body down that edge. I kept moving, kept pushing. Suddenly, a branch cracked to my right. I realized she was circling me. They were splitting up and hurting me. I doubled back, heading for the ridge trail that wound toward the lot where I'd left my car hours earlier. That trail felt like my only shot. Then, something hit me. I felt a hot, sharp sting in my thigh. A rock maybe, or a knife. I gasping, but didn't cry. I quickly rolled into a shallow ditch, pressed my body flat against the ground so they can't see me. Echoes of aimless footsteps passed inches above me.
How could you let him go?
The woman growled. The man's voice stayed even.
I don't think he saw our face clearly. Let's leave.
I heard them move on, fast and silent like predators. When I got sure that they're gone, I crawled out of the ditch and limped downhill. By the time I saw the dirt road through the thinning trees, the sky had shifted from black to pale yellow. What a magnificent sunrise, I uttered in my head. My car sat like a lifeline in the distance, faint in the growing light. I didn't hesitate and I ran, limping, stumbling, gasping for breath, but I ran. Every time I looked back, I feared to see the murderous couple chasing me, but they weren't there anymore. I took my keys out, which I luckily took with me before leaving the tent. Fumbling and cursing, I jammed the first key into the lock, flung open the door, and fell into the driver's seat. I kept clicking to start the car when suddenly a face slammed into the passenger window. It was a man. His eyes were wide and wild, blood on his hands, a knife gleaming in one of them. He didn't yell or rage. He just smiled and said something inaudible. I shoved the key in the ignition and turned with a force. Finally, the car roared. The engine caught, tires spun, and gravel flew. I didn't even check the mirrors as I sped, but as I hit the bend, I caught one last look. They were standing in the dust, both of them, not chasing or waving. They were just standing and watching. I didn't stop driving until I reached the ranger station, maybe an hour later, maybe more. I don't remember, as I could barely talk when I stumbled in, blood down my leg, and my face scratched raw. But I told them everything, every word. When they made it back to the cliff, there was nothing at all. No bodies or blood, just my brand new tent, slashed with knife, boot prints, and long, bloody drag marks toward the edge was found. I gave my full report and stayed for hours answering questions. Till today, there's no missing persons, no arrests, and no follow-ups. The moment they placed the crown on my head, I felt her eyes burning into my back. Not my classmate's eyes, it was Casey's. I smiled robotically as the gymnasium erupted in applause that felt more like pity than celebration. The crown dug into my scalp like accusatory finger searching for the truth buried in my skull. When I turned to wave at the crowd, something pulled my gaze toward the stage mirror. For 3 terrifying seconds, I swear what stared back at me wasn't my reflection. It was Casey, smirking knowingly. Her eyes were filled with that familiar contempt I'd seen the night she died. The music skipped, lights flickered, and she vanished. But her message lingered in the air. You stole my life, twin. My date Dylan squeezed my hand as we walked off stage. You okay, Cammy? You look like you've seen a ghost. If he only knew. I excused myself to the bathroom and had locked myself in a stall when an unknowing number buzzed my phone. It was a text that read, "Wish you were me instead?" My heart jumped in my mouth. It was a text Casey had sent some months back after we had a huge fight over Dylan, but Casey's phone had been disconnected after her death. I saw Mom cancel the plan myself. Then how could it? I hurriedly blocked the number and buried my face in my palms, but whoever it was wasn't done yet because my phone buzzed again. Love that crown? Let's see how long you can hold it. My hand shook so badly I dropped the phone. This had to be someone playing some sick prank. Probably Madison or Trent. They'd always been Team Casey. Everyone was. I recalled how things had been spiraling all week. First, Alicia, who'd organized my prom queen campaign, fell down the bleachers during assembly and broke her wrist in 2 places. She swore someone pushed her, but no one was near her. Then, Josh, who'd loudly joked that I only won because my twin sister died, violently vomited during lunch. Food poisoning, supposedly, though he'd eaten the same cafeteria slop as everyone else. I had been seeing Casey everywhere, her blue dress disappearing around corners, her laugh echoing in empty hallways, the coconut scent of her shampoo lingering in bathroom stalls. I remembered the last few moments I spent with my twin sister at the lake. It had been our special place since childhood. We celebrated victories and nursed defeats there. And on that cold October night, it became the place where I finally snapped. Casey had been unusually cruel that evening.
God, imagine if you'd been born first. You'd still be the second twin. Always the echo, never the sound.
I remember how angry I was when shoved her. I didn't want her to lose balance and stumble or slipped on the moss-covered rocks. I never knew her skull would crack against stone with a sound that would forever haunt my nightmares. But I had watched her body slide into the black water. I had watched ripples spread across the lake's surface until they disappeared. And I walked away. Suddenly, the loud music echoing from the gym pulled me back to reality. I'm not spending my prom in this filthy school washroom.
Get a grip, Cammy. You're just hallucinating.
I told myself, splashing water on my face. When I went back, the night was in full swing. The Queen's dance was already announced, and Dylan had been waiting for me. Hey! I was about to break into the bathroom had you taken a moment longer. He kissed my knuckles as he led me to the center of the floor. The DJ dimmed the lights as my classmates formed a circle around us. The first 30 seconds were bearable. Then the music warped like a dying battery. The speakers crackled with static before a voice cut through. It was unmistakably mine.
I didn't mean to kill her. I just wanted her to shut up. Just once. I wanted to win.
The recording from my therapy session with our school counselor, Mrs. Green, played clear as day through the speakers. Students gasped around me. Phone cameras appeared like weapons. Dylan's hands dropped from my waist as if I was contaminated. You killed your own sister? I collapsed to my knees, the crown rolling across the floor.
I didn't do it! I didn't do it!
Security rushed the stage. Teachers scrambled toward the sound booth. Through my tears, I caught a glimpse of Casey's blue dress moving in the crowd, the same dress she wore that night at the lake. When I looked again, whoever wore it had vanished. Principal Warner and 2 police officers kept me in the chemistry lab while they sorted things out. Miss Green paced the room, visibly shaken.
Those sessions are confidential,
she repeated.
The files are kept encrypted. Who would access it?
From the lab's window, I watched ambulances arrive for 2 students trampled in the panic. My classmates huddled in groups, phones out, undoubtedly sharing videos of my meltdown. An officer stepped outside to take a call. Through the cracked door, I overheard broken fragment. Yeah, checking surveillance. Nope, no sign of a break-in. That's when I saw her again. Not a flash or a glimpse. It was unmistakably her. Casey stood across the parking lot under a street lamp, wearing that blue dress, soaking wet. She raised her hand in a mocking wave, and suddenly, everything clicked. I understood what Miss Green had been trying to tell me all along. There was no ghost. There was no haunting. There was only me. Me with the therapy recordings I'd secretly copied weeks ago. Me who'd created the fake number. Me who'd staged the accidents. Because part of me died with Casey that night at the lake. That was the good part. What remained was dark and hollow that wanted everyone to know and understand the horror of my sins. I smiled at Casey's hallucination as the officer returned. We found something, he said grimly. A video on the school server, uploaded from your account. As my world collapsed around me, I heard Casey's voice whisper clearly in my ear.
Checkmate, loser.
She giggled, and so did I. Lily and I have stayed at this foster care for only a week. Our parents, the old Martin, were leaving for dinner, leaving us home alone. When their tires rolled out, Lily jumped on the couch with a tub of popcorn to watch the TV. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the TV. Around 20 minutes later, Lily was half asleep on the couch. I was scrolling through my phone when the lights flickered off. Huh? I frowned. The TV screen was black, except that nothing was on. Total silence. Lily? I called as I stood up. She stirred.
What the hell?
She said groggily. Then I heard it. A faint click from down the hallway. The front door creaked open. I froze. My stomach twisted inside me. For a second, I wanted to believe the Martins had come back early. But then I heard the heavy footsteps. Not slow, heavy steps or familiar. No, heavy boots. Lily shot upright, her eyes wide open all of a sudden. I looked through the curtain. 2 men, masks, crowbars, duffel bags, all slipping inside. I saw one of them twist a screwdriver roughly in the lock until the doorframe cracked. Lily grabbed my arm, whispering,
Max, we need to hide.
We sprinted down the hallway.
In here.
Lily hissed, yanking me into the coat closet. I could barely breathe. My heart was hammering in my chest so loudly, I was sure they'd hear it. We crouched low, huddled beneath a pile of jackets, trying to stay as still as possible. From outside, I could hear them moving through the house, shattering glass, tossing furniture.
Grab the silverware,
one of them muttered.
Find the safe,
the other growled. Lily's fingers dug into my arm, her knuckles white. And then my phone buzzed, a stupid spam notification. I fumbled to silence it, but it was too late. The footsteps stopped.
You hear that?
One of the men whispered.
Yeah, closet.
I felt Lily's entire body tense against mine. My stomach turned cold. The door creaked open slowly, and for a brief, horrifying moment, my eyes met one of the robber's eyes. He grinned.
Gotcha!
Before he could grab us, Lily yanked me out of the closet. We tore down the hallway. The robber's heavy footsteps thudded behind us, closing in fast.
Faster, Max!
Lily screamed, pulling me toward the stairs. We scrambled to the second floor and slammed a bedroom door shut behind us. Lily shoved the dresser against the door, her hands trembling violently. I remained there, gasping, with my heart pounding in my ears.
We need to get out! The window!
I shouted, but before we could even move, the other guy kicked the door down. The dresser screeched as it moved across the floor, but it didn't stop him.
Where do you think you're going?
He laughed, eyes wide with excitement. We ran for the attic, with Lily shoving me ahead of her. I grabbed the shaky ladder and climbed with my hands shaking, while my feet slipped off the wood. She pulled the ladder up behind us, leaving the robbers under us.
You can't hide forever, kids,
one of them said, with a sick amusement in his tone.
We have all night.
The attic itself was dark and so hot I was soaking wet with sweat, my hands slippery with fear. Lily's breath was short again, and her skinny arms were trembling.
What do we do?
I hissed in a whisper.
The vent!
She panted and motioned to the small, bent, rusty grate in the corner of the attic. She pulled open the grate with only her hands and bled a little from the jagged edges.
Go, Max!
She urged, shoving me inside. I crawled into the metal shaft, my knees scraping against the rusty surface. My chest felt tight. It was too narrow, claustrophobic, but I kept moving. Lily squeezed in behind me, her breath hot against my back. From below, I heard them discuss.
We need to find another way up.
The vent led us to the garage crawl space. We dropped down with a thud, hitting the cold concrete floor. My knees burned from the fall. Lily grabbed my hand, trying to pull me toward the side door. But suddenly, one robber was there, waiting.
Smart kids,
he sneered, his eyes glinting cruelly. He lunged at Lily, grabbing her wrist. Without thinking, I snatched a rusty screwdriver from the workbench and plunged it into his thigh. He screamed in pain, stumbling backward.
Run!
Lily shouted. We bolted for the garage door, but his partner appeared, blocking the exit. He had a crowbar in his hand, swinging it slowly back and forth.
Going somewhere?
He hissed. Desperate, Lily grabbed a bottle of turpentine from the shelf and hurled it at his face. It splattered across his eyes, making him howl in agony, clawing at his face. Just when we thought we were free, he tackled Lily, slamming her against the concrete floor. She screamed as he held her down, his hand resting on her mouth. I saw the wounded guy limping toward me in rage. There was a heavy garage door handle, and I smashed it down on his arm as he tried to grab me. He screamed, and his bones cracked under the weight of the door. I turned just in time to see Lily, her face and chest covered in blood, sink her teeth into her attacker's hand. He roared in pain and loosened his grip just enough for her to shove him backward. The sound of sirens broke the night. It was sound of cop cars. We run out screaming for help. The neighbors heard screams from our house, so called the cops. The cops tackled the robber down onto the ground. Lily and I settled into the back of an ambulance, trembling under silver-thin blankets. My hands won't stop shaking.
You saved me, Max.
She whispered. I shook my head, still gasping for breath. No, you saved me. I squatted on the carpet, its fibers worn and frayed between my fingers, picked at the edges. A faint scent of pine-scented cleaner and old wood permeated the air, a huge change from the thick dampness that greeted me at the group home just a week ago. I'd only been with Roy, a middle-aged foster father with soft eyes and a friendly smile, for 5 days. At first, I felt thankful. He brought me some new clothes, allowed me to choose my own meals, and even said that I didn't have to have a fixed bedtime. Everything felt safe. Still, I'd been in foster care long enough to tell when things didn't feel quite right. It started with the rules.
You want to keep the basement door locked all the time. It's just storage. Nothing there you want.
He said.
You can't use the landline, it's not working. So if you need to call someone, just let me know.
The landline thing was odd, but I didn't ask any questions. Until tonight. The moment Roy left the house at 8 p.m., I heard it. Thud. A heavy, dull bang from somewhere down the hall. I ripped the earbuds from my ears and sat up, straining to listen. Bang. Bang. It was coming from the locked hallway closet, the one Roy was always locking. I hesitantly approached the door, my palms sweaty. I pressed my ear to the door and listened closely. Soft, uneven breaths. Shallow. Desperate. My heart skipped a beat. I tried the handle. It was locked, of course. But I wasn't a rookie at this. I had run away from enough foster homes to know a thing or two. I pulled out a bobby pin from my pocket. My hands were shaking, but I jigged it into the lock. My hands were sweaty, making it difficult to keep a steady hand. A couple of shaky attempts later, I felt the lock click. Slowly, I pulled the door open, super slowly, until my stomach dropped. Huddled in the corner was a young girl, no older than 10, with matted brown hair and filthy pajamas. Her wrists were raw from the shackles clamped around them. Her wide, terrified eyes locked onto mine.
Please, help me,
she whispered, her voice hoarse and cracked. For half a second, I just stood there, my brain frozen.
What the hell?
I choked out. I knelt down, fumbling with the shackles. Her small arms were trembling, sticky with blood and grime. She clung to me with what little strength she had left. But before I could even breathe, I heard it, the click of the front door unlocking. Roy was back. I slammed the closet shut, but I wasn't fast enough. The door creaked open. Our eyes met across the hallway. For the first time, I saw the kindness drain from his face, replaced by a cold, calculating fury.
What are you doing?
His voice was low and measured, but I could hear the edge of it. I took a step back, pulling the girl behind me.
You lied!
I stammered, my voice cracking with fear. He sprang into action. His hand covered my mouth and jerked me backward. The girl screamed, an awful shrill wail that pierced my ears. I kicked and flailed, but Roy had more strength. He dragged me down toward the basement, his nails digging into my arm. I thrashed. I bit down on his hand, tasting blood. He let out an enraged snarl, but didn't lose his grip. He tossed me back against the basement stairs, and briefly, everything was a blur. I saw stars circling my head as it made contact with the wood. A girl was sobbing from the hallway, the sound raw and terrible.
Please, don't leave me,
she cried. Roy grabbed a coil of rope from the corner, his face twisted with rage.
You shouldn't have opened that door, Clara,
he growled, his voice eerily calm. I thrashed and kicked, my fingernails dug into his face, leaving red welts.
You're not taking me down here!
I screamed. He shoved me against the cement floor, pinning me by my shoulders. His hand wrapped around my throat, squeezing. My lungs burned, my vision tunneling. Desperate, I scrambled blindly for anything. My hand found the broken glass from a fallen jar. Without thinking, I plunged it into his thigh. Roy let out a strangled yell, his grip loosening. I scrambled to my feet, blood splattered on my hands. He lunged again, but I kicked his wounded leg. He staggered, cursing, his face twisted in pain. I ran. I grabbed the girl's hand and sprinted toward the front door. My legs ached, my lungs burned, but I didn't stop. Roy's footsteps thudded behind us.
Get back here!
He roared. I threw the front door open and pushed the girl out. My fingers struggled to lock it. The girl has already started screaming, attracting the neighbors. Within a few minutes, 3 men rushed into the house and pinned down Roy on the floor. I was finally free from his claws. The cops came and arrested Roy. The neighbors spoke in our behalf, and the house was searched. 2 more girls were found in the house, hidden from plain sight, tied with chains and padlocks. I don't know how successful I'll turn out to be in this life, but I'll always be proud of myself. Anna had found this cheap Airbnb, secluded cabin, forest views, all that rustic charm bullshit for what was supposed to be a fun weekend. But the place felt wrong from the moment we pulled up. Everything too quiet, like it had been holding its breath, waiting. We settled in anyway, unpacked the tequila, started a drinking game, and by midnight, we were all sloppy drunk, laughing too loud to silence the unease crawling under our skin. I passed out on the couch at around 2 a.m. Couldn't have been asleep more than an hour when Emily's ice-cold hand clamped over my mouth, stifling a terrified shriek. Her eyes were wide, pupils blown with a thrill.
Living room. Now.
She whispered. I followed her on unsteady legs. Madison and Hannah were already circled around something in the floor, a rusted metal ring jutting from the wooden boards, like a bone through skin.
Open it,
Madison whispered, excited. I knelt down, gripped the cold iron ring, and pulled. The hinges groaned like an animal dying. That smell hit me so hard I gagged. Damp earth and something sickly sweet, like meat gone bad. My phone's flashlight caught rough stone steps disappearing into darkness.
Guys, we shouldn't. The owners hadn't mentioned the basement.
Hannah whispered, backing away. But Emily was already descending, giggling that high, tight laugh she got when she was scared but wouldn't admit it.
Don't be such a fucking baby, Han.
The basement wasn't built, it was excavated. Just raw boulder walls like one of those Game of Thrones dungeons. The ceiling pressed down, forcing us to stoop as we scurried deeper. In the corner sat a child-sized table with a single chair. Scattered around it were toys no child should own. Dolls with mouths sewn shut. A rocking horse with what looked like real teeth embedded in its mane. Behind the table, hundreds of tally marks scratched into the dirt wall. Some looked decades old. Others looked relatively fresh. Madison picked up a half-burned book from the table. Morale was carved into its cover.
Listen to this,
She said, reading from the last page.
Mommy thinks burning me will make me go away. Stupid mommy. Fire just makes me angry. I'll wear someone new every night. Guys, I think someone did rituals down here.
Emily pointed at a circle of blackened candles in the corner. Madison's eyes lit up.
We should do a seance.
Are you freaking kidding me? My voice cracked.
Come on, Tyler. Don't you want to meet little Muriel?
Emily teased. But that night, after too many beers and shots, there we were, sitting in a circle in the suffocating basement. The candles we'd found cast flickering shadows across the dirt walls.
We call upon the spirit of Muriel.
Madison intoned.
Come forward and speak to us.
Hannah fidgeted beside me.
This is stupid.
And disrespectful. Shh.
Emily snapped.
Muriel, if you're here, give us a sign.
Suddenly, the candles flickered, all at once. Very funny, I said. Who blew on them? No one answered. The air had gone completely still. Then the trapdoor slammed shut with a bang so loud it made us all jump. What the fuck? I scrambled up, rushing to the steps. The door wouldn't budge. Guys, it's stuck! A horrible choking noise cut me off. I turned to see Emily convulsing on the floor, her back arched at an impossible angle. Her eyes rolled back as her limbs jerked violently.
Emily!
Madison screamed, reaching for her. Hannah screamed.
Don't touch her!
Too late. The moment Madison's fingers brushed Emily's skin, Emily's head rotated 180 degrees with a wet, tearing sound. Her eyes had changed. Not just black, they were leaking. Dark fluid streamed upward across her forehead, defying gravity.
Not Emily.
The voice from her mouth wasn't human. Multiple tones layered over each other, like a child's voice stuffed.
Moriel is here.
Emily's body snapped upright with a sound like kindling breaking. Her head remained backward with that terrible grin splitting her face literally ear to ear. The skin tore at the corners.
I know all your secrets.
She sang, neck twisting further with each word.
Hannah screws her professor while her boyfriend sleeps. Madison steals dead people's jewelry at funerals.
Hannah gasped. Madison went white. She crawled toward me, moving like a spider.
And Tyler, good sweet Tyler, you watch your roommate shower through the crack in the door.
My stomach dropped. "Stop it, Emily," I said, shaking. She was inches from my face, her breath sour and cold.
Not Emily!
She shrieked, her voice splitting into multiple tones. Then she lunged at me. Unbelievably strong hands wrapped around my throat as inhuman fingernails dug into my skin. My eyes rolled back in my head, while Emily twisted with inhuman speed, throwing Madison across the room when she tried helping. Hannah screamed.
Mommy tried to lock me away.
Emily... Morris whispered, face inches from mine.
Just like you'll be locked away. Forever.
Suddenly, Hannah smashed a porcelain doll against Emily's head. She collapsed, releasing her grip. We dragged Emily up the stairs. This time, the trap door opened easily. Too easily, like it wanted us to leave. We burst into the living room. The morning sun was streaming through the windows. Emily was bleeding from her temple, still unconscious. Again, her eyes snapped open. We scurried away while she groaned and blinked. However, this time, her normal brown eyes, confused, scared, stared at us. She started screaming, raw animal sounds of terror. Then she vomited, a thick black liquid that smelled like rot. We didn't wait, just drove to the hospital, Emily still screaming, her voice going hoarse. The doctors diagnosed her with a psychotic break. They didn't believe our story about the basement, about the voice that wasn't hers, and we were too much of a chicken to revisit the dungeons. I visited her yesterday at the psychiatric hospital. She doesn't talk anymore, just sits by the window, drawing the same thing over and over. A circle of candles, a child's table, and when no one was watching, she looked at me and smiled. Once again, her eyes, just for a second, went completely black. I'd been driving for 23 hours straight that night. Cross-country trip after my mom's funeral. Too broke for a hotel and too numb to care. My eyes burned, the road blurred. When the 7-Eleven sign appeared like some neon mirage, I nearly wept with relief. The parking lot was empty except for a rusted Honda. The digital clock on my dash read 12:17 a.m. As I killed the engine, something crawled up my spine. That feeling of being watched. When I pushed through the door, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry insects. The place reeked of bleach and burnt coffee. Everything looked sickly, unreal. The cashier was a scrawny kid, barely out of high school, glued to his phone. The coffee smelled burnt, but I needed the caffeine. As I filled a cup, I felt warmth breathe. Too close to my skin, the hairs on my neck rose. I turned, and my whole body froze. A guy in a black hoodie stood inches away. I couldn't see much of his face, just pale skin and these wide, unblinking eyes. Too wide, like they'd been stretched.
You shouldn't be here right now,
he whispered, voice tight like he was being strangled. My chest went cold. What? He didn't repeat. His eyes flicked, fast and sharp, toward the glass door.
They're coming,
he muttered.
Leave before it's too late.
My skin prickled all over. I turned to the cashier. The kid still hadn't moved, scrolling, dead-eyed, like he didn't hear a thing the guy had said. I turned back, but he was gone. No footsteps, no door chime, just a trail of crisp, cold air. My heart hammered against my ribs. Who was he? And what was he trying to warn me about? I hurriedly grabbed a Snickers. Just pay and go. Simple. I was an aisle away from the cashier when suddenly the door chimed and two men sauntered in. The first was built like a linebacker, denim jacket stretched tight across massive shoulders, hands that could crush a skull. The second was tall and wiry with a buzzed head. They didn't grab drinks or snacks, didn't even pretend to shop.
Empty the register.
Denim jacket slapped the cashier in the face, and the boy's cell phone clattered onto the counter. Instinctively, I ducked behind the chip display. Through the gaps in the shelf, I saw Buzzcut pull out a gun.
Be a nice boy and you'll get off with just a black eye.
The beeping of the register was impossibly loud. I could hear cash being shoved into pockets, the rustle of bills, the cashier's ragged breathing. My own heart pounded so hard, I was terrified they'd hear it. Keeping an eye on the counter, I started crawling toward the end of the aisle. 3 more feet, and I'd have a straight shot to the door.
This it?
Denim jacket snarled. I was close, real close. Just a half a meter and I'd have the safety of my car. But then my fingers trembled, slick with sweat, and that damn Snickers slipped and hit the linoleum with a soft thud. Everything stopped. Even the buzzing lights seemed to go silent.
Check that. We ain't alone,
Buzzcut said. I sprinted, no thinking, pure animal terror burst from behind the display, lunging for the exit.
Hey!
The first shot exploded through the air. Glass shattered next to my head, the noise so loud my ears rang. The second shot tore through my left arm. At first, it just felt like someone had slammed me with a bat. But then came the pain, sharp and stinging, like somebody poured gasoline in the wound and lit a match. I hit the door with my good shoulder, stumbling into the parking lot. Keys! Where were my freaking keys? I dug through my pocket, fingers slippery with blood. They fell, skidding under my car. I dropped to my knees, cursing, feeling under the chassis. Behind me, the door chimed. I looked back to see Buzzcut in the doorway, gun pointed right at me. Just as our eyes met, my fingers closed around the keys. I scrambled up, fumbling with the lock, leaving bloody handprints on the door. I got in somehow. The engine roared to life as the third shot cracked my back window. I floored it. In the rear view, I saw him just standing there, watching me go. I drove blind with panic, 10 miles down the highway. I had to pull over. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. 3 days slipped by in the hospital. The cops showed up on the second one. I told them everything. The robbery, the panic, the man in the hoodie.
We'll try to catch the guys,
one of them said. What about the other guy, the one in the hoodie? I asked. The cop paused.
What hoodie guy, Logan? There was no one else in that store. Just you, the cashier, and the 2 perps.
Check the security footage, I snapped. He was there. He warned me. They checked, but every frame showed the same thing. Me grabbing burnt coffee, ducking behind an aisle, running for my life.
Maybe your exhausted head made it up.
The cop shrugged, and I believed him. Till today, I try to make sense of that night, but it all seems like a drowning memory. Who do you think that guy was? Was he real or just some trigger of my brain? 3 students from Westlake High had gone missing in the past month. The police were out on the hunt. Some said they'd been spotted at the abandoned mall on Route 16. Others whispered about a van circling the neighborhoods around school. Our parents started driving us to class. Teachers patrolled hallways during breaks, and the district implemented twice-weekly lockdown drills just to be safe. The first thing I noticed wasn't his face, it was the smell. Copper and chemicals, like pennies soaked in bleach. Our regular history teacher had been out sick for 3 days. This substitute, Mr. Rowan, carried himself differently from other teachers. While he wrote on the whiteboard, his sleeve inched up, revealing a dark stain his hasty washing hadn't quite removed. I was still staring, trying to piece it all together, when the lockdown alarm blared. The classroom froze. This wasn't the half-hearted monthly drill tone. This was the shrill, pulsing wail they'd only tested once, the one that meant inescapable danger. "Everyone under your desks," Mr. Rowan said, unnervingly calm. He didn't look one bit surprised. As we scrambled for cover, I caught a glimpse through the classroom window. Police cars silently pulling into the parking lot, officers crouching behind vehicles, weapons drawn. My heart hammered against my ribs. My uncle's a cop. Those weren't positions for a drill. Mr. Rowan didn't follow protocol. He didn't check the lock or turn off the lights. Instead, he pulled down the blinds with deliberate slowness, watching the police through the narrow gap. Something changed in his face, a tightening around the eyes, a twitch at the corner of his mouth. That's how I knew they were here for him. I reached for my phone, but his hand clamped down on my wrist. His grip was crushing, nothing like a teacher's warning touch. "No phones, Hannah." His whisper had raised the hair on my neck. "I know you're a good girl." We hadn't done roll call. His other hand emerged from his pocket holding a hunting knife. Not a small pocket knife, but a serrated tactical blade at least 6 inches long. The kind hunters used to gut deer. The fluorescent lights caught its edge as he turned it slowly. "Everybody's phones now." Tyler caught my eye from beneath his desk. His jaw was set, and I recognized the look. The same one he'd had before breaking his arm jumping off Miller's Cliff last summer. Reckless determination. I shook my head fractionally. "You know what's funny?" Mr. Rowan said, collecting phones in a metal trash can. "How easy it is, walking in with a briefcase and a smile." He chuckled. "No one checks, no one inquires. You just say you're from the district office, and they hand you a classroom full of kids." A soft whimper came from somewhere in the room. He whirled toward the sound, nostrils flaring. "Shut up!" His voice changed, dropping any pretense of normalcy. "Or I'll give them something to find besides the janitor." Janitor? I froze. Mr. Keller had been missing since Monday. Suddenly, a knock at the door made everyone flinch.
Mr. Rowan?
Miss Riley's panic-filled voice boomed. In one fluid motion, he grabbed me, pressing the knife against my throat while pointing it threateningly at the rest of the class. His eyes swept the room with a promise that screamed, "Make a sound, and I start with her." Through the door's small window, I could see only Miss Riley's silhouette, not her face. She couldn't see what was happening inside either.
"They're evacuating the East Wing. They found..."
Her voice dropped.
"Just stay put until officers clear your hallway."
Found what? My pulse roared in my ears. "All present!" he called back. The moment she left, my chair creaked. I had shifted. His head snapped, pupils dilated so wide his eyes looked black. "You moved," he said, voice eerily childlike. "No one's supposed to move during lockdown." He lunged, grabbing my hair and yanking me up, the knife pressed under my jaw, cold metal against my pounding pulse. "All of you," he commanded. "Against the wall." My classmates stood up, trembling. "You're coming with me," he whispered in my ear, his breath hot and sour. Suddenly, Tyler launched himself from behind a desk, swinging the metal leg he'd twisted off of his chair. It connected with the substitute's knee with a sickening crunch. The man howled, slashing wildly. The blade caught Tyler's arm, opening a gash that immediately bloomed crimson. But the distraction was enough. I slammed my elbow into his ribs and broke free.
"Everyone get him!"
I lunged for the classroom phone, jabbing the emergency button.
"Room 207!
I screamed into the receiver.
He's got a weapon! He's not a teacher!"
The substitute's face contorted with rage. He limped toward me, knife raised high.
"I've gutted people for less!"
He snarled, lunging forward, but Tyler tackled him from behind. They crashed into desks, a tangle of limbs and blood and fury. Other students joined in now, desperation overcoming fear, throwing books, chairs, anything to slow him down. The door burst open. 2 officers rushed in, weapons raised, shouting commands that blurred together in my adrenaline-soaked brain. The substitute was pinned, cuffed, dragged upright. As they pulled him past me, he turned, his face inches from mine, and smiled. Promising, terrible, like a death mask carved from flesh.
"You disappoint me, Hannah,"
he whispered, so softly only I could hear.
"I know where you sit, what you smell like when you're afraid."
They shoved him forward, but he looked over his shoulder, mouthing 2 words. "Next time." Later, we learned the truth. Samuel Ketch was a man wanted in 3 states for crimes against kids and teenagers. He'd walked out of a maximum security psychiatric ward 2 days earlier, leaving 3 orderlies dead with their throats cut, the same way they'd found Mr. Keller, our janitor, stuffed behind the boiler in the East Wing basement. The real substitute had been found in the trunk of his own car, 3 miles from the school. Sometimes at night, I can hear that soft click of the box cutter. I've switched schools, but I check the substitute's cuffs every time a regular teacher is out. I've always been drawn to the things that make Zach nervous. There's something about his cautious, "we shouldn't," that makes me want to say we absolutely should. That summer day wasn't any different. The sun blazed overhead, turning the secluded beach into an oven. My skin was already burning despite the sunscreen Zach had insisted we both apply repeatedly, but I didn't care. Being 15 meant hunting for adventure, wherever I could find it. "Dude, check that out!" I pointed toward a structure I spotted behind the dunes. A weathered shack with splintered boards and a partially collapsed roof, almost hidden from view. Zach squinted against the sunlight. Probably just some old storage thing. But I was already trudging through the hot sand toward it. I could feel him hesitating before following. As we got closer, there was a smell that hit me like a punch to the gut. Rotting seaweed mixed with something sour and wrong. That's when I saw him. A man sitting behind the shack in a frayed beach chair. Everything about him was unsettling. His skin was burnt to leather, cracked and peeling in places. Greasy hair hung in salt-crusted ropes around a face that seemed both too old and too young at the same time. "Hot day, huh, boys?" His voice was like sandpaper on rust. I nodded casually. "Yeah, nice spot you got here." His cracked lips spread into what I guess was meant to be a smile. "I've got something even better inside." He gestured toward a smaller structure behind the main shack that I hadn't noticed before. "You boys like girls?" I felt Zach's hand grip my arm, his fingers digging in hard, but I couldn't look away from the man's captivating bloodshot eyes. "Got some rare footage," the man continued, slowly running his tongue over his lips. "Stuff you won't find online." "Let's check it out," I whispered to Zach as I followed the man toward the smaller hut. The moment I stepped inside, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. The air was thick and rancid, like breathing through a dirty sponge. Faded posters covered the walls, girls in bikinis, but their eyes looked wrong, vacant, terrified. "Make yourselves comfortable," the man said, gesturing to 2 metal folding chairs facing a yellowed projector screen. My heart hammered in my chest, but my stupid pride wouldn't let me back out now. I sat down, feeling Zach reluctantly do the same behind me. The man switched on an ancient VCR and grainy footage flickered to life on the screen. It started innocently enough, young women laughing on a beach, splashing in waves. But the camera movements felt invasive, lingering too long, zooming in when they weren't looking. Then, the footage cut abruptly. The same women were now in a dark room, blindfolded and gagged, their makeup streaked with tears. My throat closed up. The next scene showed a room with plastic sheets covering the walls. One of the girls was dragged in, thrashing wildly. "Turn it off!" I abruptly stood up, disgusted. The man chuckled, a sound like gravel shifting, and paused the video. He leaned forward until I could smell his breath. "Why? We're just getting to the good part." He reached for a shelf and picked up what looked like a blood-stained hair scrunchie, bringing it to his nose with a contented sigh. "You know what makes this so special?" he asked, his eyes never leaving mine. "I was the cameraman, director,
And sometimes the actor.
My gaze dropped to the floor. What I thought were rust stains suddenly looked different, darker, deliberate. Zach bolted for the door, and this time, I was right behind him. But the man moved with impossible speed, blocking our exit. His face transformed completely. The casual friendliness was replaced by starvation.
Where you running, kid? You haven't even seen my collection.
He flicked open a fishing knife and slowly scraped it across a wooden table, creating a sound that made my teeth ache.
It's always fun,
he continued, taking a step towards us.
They wander in here, looking for adventure, giddy to see my collection, but objected when I insisted they starve them.
Then he lunged, grabbed me by the collar and yanked me close. I could smell the salt and rot on his skin as he pressed the blade against my throat. I kicked him hard in the chest, breaking free from his grip. We shoved past him and sprinted toward the exit, but he recovered quickly, tackling me. Zach hurriedly grabbed a metal pole from the pile of junk and swung it with everything he had. It connected with the man's wrist with a sickening crack, and the knife clattered to the floor. We tore through the hut, searching frantically for another way out. The man rose slowly behind us, blood dripping between his fingers, his face twisted in rage.
You're part of the collection,
he sneered.
You can't leave.
Suddenly, I spotted a rusted flare gun. My hand shook violently as I aimed and pulled the trigger. The flare struck his shoulder, igniting his shirt. He screamed, stumbling into a stack of wooden crates and knocking over a lit candle. The shack ignited in seconds. We burst through the door, choking on smoke, and ran until our lungs burned. A lifeguard spotted us and rushed over. Between gasps for air, we explained about the man, the videos, and the attack. The lifeguard radioed for help, and we ran back toward the burning shack. But when we arrived, there was nothing. No fire, no smoke. The hut stood empty. No projector, no blood-stained floor, no tapes, just bare shelves covered in dust.
Boys, looking for trouble?
The lifeguard's eyes narrowed. I exchanged a horrified glance with Zach.
But we were just in there,
I cried. Let's get away. Zach put a shivering hand on my shoulder. Maybe the heat just got in our heads. I felt it before the elevator even reached the 37th floor. A tight, twisting knot just under my ribs. Probably just first-day jitters. New job, new city, new everything. But the second those elevator doors slid open, I knew I'd made a mistake. She was the first thing I saw, sitting at reception, clicking those blood-red nails against her keyboard like she'd been waiting for me. Vanessa Miller. Our eyes locked. She smiled. That same slow, devious smirk she flashed me the night I told her it was over, right before she picked up a kitchen knife and whispered that one of us was about to bleed. "What are you doing here?" I choked. She tilted her head playful and giggled.
I work here, silly. Isn't it crazy?
I forced myself to keep walking past her, past the weight in my chest. People work with their exes all the time, even the unhinged ones. A thick stack of presentations was already waiting at my desk along with the instruction notes.
$1 million accounts due by end of day. Don't screw it up.
I threw myself into the work. For a couple of hours, I even forgot she was out there, watching. It might have been 11 o'clock when I stepped away for a tea break. 10 minutes, tops. When I got back, every file on my system was corrupted. I stared at the screen like maybe I was dreaming. Tried rebooting, reopening, recovering. Nothing. By noon, the phones were ringing off the hook. Clients were screaming. Greg's voice came through my headset, tight with anger.
My office, now! Every woman in the department received explicit messages from your email, Mr. Reynolds,
he said, sliding printouts across the desk.
I didn't write these,
I pleaded.
It's Vanessa, she's my ex.
Greg was frantic.
You've been here 6 hours and created nothing but problems. Fix everything you've broken before leaving tonight. I don't care if you stay all night.
As I left his office, I swear I'd heard a giggle. Slumped shoulders, I buried myself back in work, pretending everything had already gone to hell. By 7, the office was empty. Just me, my monitor's cold glow, and that thick kind of silence where every keyboard click sounds like a gunshot. I was digging through my email settings when the lights flickered before it went out totally. Not just at my desk, the whole floor. Even the emergency exit signs blinked out like dying embers. Then, a dim glow flickered to life in a corner. I froze. It was a flashlight, not mine. And right there, on the inside of the glass wall, was smeared in wet red a question she had always asked me. "You promise you love me, baby?" My breath caught. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my teeth. She'd been right here, waiting. I spun around, grabbed my bag, and bolted for the elevators. Dead. Tried the stairwell. Locked. Every goddamn exit was sealed. I was contemplating my next move when from the dark, her voice floated out, sing-song soft.
Remember our first night together? You said we'll be together forever.
Such a liar, Ethan.
I dropped behind a row of cubicles, trying to quiet my breath. My hand landed on something solid, a stapler. Not ideal, but heavy enough.
You know what's funny?
She was close.
I got you this job. Saw your resume. Told the director how brilliant you were. I handpicked this office for us.
A beam of light swept the floor. I crawled, elbows and knees burning as I moved away from the voice.
You think blocking my number would stop me? I watched you for 3 years, Ethan. Your LinkedIn, your socials. Your sweet mom still likes my comments.
I made it to the break room, grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, metal thermos, just as the flashlight swung toward me. She laughed, that same brittle, high-pitched laugh that used to echo through my apartment walls when I ignored her calls, but she'd still show up. "You're crazy!" I shivered.
No.
She spat.
Crazy was when I waited outside your building for 6 days straight just to see your face. This is love.
The beam found me. There she was, in the doorway. Box cutter in one hand, the flashlight in the other. Blood-red lips parted sinfully.
I've been planning this for months.
She whispered, stepping closer.
Do you know how hard it is to hack into a building's security? The things we do for love, right?
I hurled the stapler at her face and barreled past her, slamming her into the wall. She didn't cry out. She laughed, giddy, like she was proud of me. I ran blindly and landed in the conference room. The fire escape was just across the gap, but the glass wouldn't budge. I grabbed a chair, smashing it again and again, until the window exploded outward. Cold air rushed in. City lights blurred through my stinging eyes. Behind me, the footsteps hastened.
Where are you gonna go, Ethan?
She stood at the broken window, blood dripping from her temple. She wiped it and licked.
That's a 37th floor drop. You jump, you die. You stay, we talk this out.
I backed up to the edge, legs swinging out.
This isn't talking. This is fucking insane. You're mad.
You made me mad.
She shrieked and lunged. I didn't decide to jump. My body did. 1 second, I was at the window. The next, I was flying. The gap was so much wider than I remembered. I hit the fire escape hard. Steel grated against my palms. My leg screamed. Something tore, but I didn't care. I was alive. I passed out seconds later, and when I woke up next, I was in the hospital, and Vanessa was locked up. The security had heard the crash and stepped in. They arrested her immediately. Breaking, hacking, assault, attempted murder. The charges were inescapable. My boss apologized, begging me not to sue the organization, and promised he'd take care of the hospital expenses, but I had quit anyway. The sound a neck makes when it breaks is not like in the movies. It's quieter, wetter, and subtle, but I didn't know it back then. I stood at prom in my strapless blue dress, my palms sweaty against the curtain roll. Not when 300 of my classmates were dancing and laughing and looking forward to the big reveal that the school and I had spent weeks planning for the prom night. Not until Mr. Levy tapped his fingers twice on his watch to signal that it was time. I should have figured immediately something wasn't right. It was 12 seconds early, but I pulled away, letting the curtain fall. Eerie silence took over for a heartbeat before the chaos ensued. Horrified screams reverberated. People ran, literally pushing and crushing each other. My heart had dropped into my stomach. Before 300 pairs of eyes, Mr. Gaines, our janitor, was dangling from the metal ropes. His neck was stretched impossibly long, the skin split in places where the rope had cut deep. Blood oozed from the fatal wound, and his bloated face was mottled purple-black.
Nobody moves!
Principal Weston's voice boomed immediately. Mr. Levy grabbed my arm. When did you check last behind the curtain?
20 minutes ago? I swear it was empty.
I stammered, still tasting bile. Tell them exactly that, he demanded, walking away. When the cops interrogated me, I lied. I didn't tell them how I caught Mr. Levy and Gaines arguing 2 days back in the auditorium. Levy was threatening the school janitor.
You're sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, Gaines.
Mr. Gaines retorted.
Kids deserve to know who's teaching them.
But I kept it all in because I had no idea what they were talking about. That night, I dreamt of Gaines's bulging eyes, watching me from the ceiling of my bedroom, as if urging me to speak his part of the story. The next morning, I had to dig deeper. I found Gaines's safety account where he'd anonymously posted about school hazards. The stuff was boring, stupid complaints about malfunctions and all. Amidst the pile, I found a photo that seems to be taken secretly. It was a blurry silhouette of a man pressing a girl against the costume rack. The faces weren't clear, but that distinctive blue and gold tie on that man was unmistakable. It was Mr. Levy's tie, the one he wore every day at school religiously. My hands trembled as I printed the photo. So that means our janitor found out what a monster Mr. Levy is. No more safeguarding a predator like him, I thought. That day, I slipped the photo into our principal's mailbox. The whole day, I was both relieved and proud. I thought I had done my part and it was over. Seemingly, it wasn't, because as soon as the night fell, a soft tapping at my window jolted me up. I didn't see anyone, but there was a red envelope by the windowsill. The note inside read, "Thanks for your performance." Next second, a notification lit up my phone. Our school drama club's YouTube channel had posted a video with the same title as the note. The footage was grainy, nightmarish, but visible enough. Mr. Gaines was being dragged across the stage, his head lolling unnaturally, leaving a thick smear of black. His fingers twitched. God, he was still alive when this was filmed. The screen went black for a couple of seconds before it zoomed in on a petite silhouette, unmistakably wearing our drama club's tragedy mask. I froze. The realization had hit like a physical blow. It was Eliza Inn, my best friend since sophomore year. All those late nights, working on the set. How she always stayed behind with Levy for extra help. The way she defended him when rumors started. It suddenly started making horrifying sense. My phone slipped from my shaking fingers as pieces clicked into place. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I picked up my phone again and called her. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting.
It was you.
I choked out. She sighed into the phone.
Took you long enough.
Eliza continued with unnerving calmness.
Gain was going to ruin my Levi. How could I let that happen? I love him, Jess. He makes me feel seen. You wouldn't understand.
The way she said it so casually, like we were discussing weekend plans, made my skin crawl. She inhaled sharply before narrating in great detail how she had to shut up Mr. Gaines. I heard the madness, frozen and horrified. How had I never noticed before? This wasn't my friend.
I'm calling the police. I have the photo of you and Levi.
I breathed, shivering like a leaf. Eliza giggled.
And who would they catch, Jess? Levi has left. I'm leaving too. What do you mean? Check your mailbox. I left you something to remember me by.
I crept outside, checking over my shoulder with every step as I approached the mailbox. Inside was a small USB drive, a Polaroid photo of my grandparents' house, and a handwritten script titled Act 2, The Hero Falls.
I know where they all live.
She whispered into the phone. My blood ran cold.
What do you want?
I whispered.
Forget me or Levi. Stay away.
And then she disconnected the call. I ran back inside and straight to my window, heart threatening to burst from my chest. The street looked empty, but then something moved in the shadows of the oak tree across from my house. A white mask caught the moonlight for just a second before disappearing. I haven't slept in 3 days because I know she's out there, watching, waiting. I can't go to the cops because I am afraid this crazy teacher-student couple will hurt my family. I don't know if there's anything more I can do to bring justice to Mr. Gaines. We were first-time parents in a new environment with no sleep and no family around to help us out. Our baby girl, Lily, cried through the night. Every night. I didn't have a hot meal in 2 weeks. The house reeked of old formula and desperation, and then, just like an angel dispatched directly from our misery, someone left a flyer on our doorstep. Experienced babysitter, CPR certified, excellent references. Call Eliza. It honestly felt like our universe had decided to intervene and finally help us. Eliza was perfect, refined, collected. Her voice was silky, her clothes smooth, her smile soft but completely vacant. The moment she touched Lily, the crying stopped. I cried in the shower out of relief. Even after the first time she sat with Lily, I slept for 4 hours straight. It felt like an awakening. But then things started to change quickly. I would find Lily's toys in strangely placed locations. Sometimes they were arranged in little circles or weird patterns like seance. They were always facing the window, and Eliza would somehow show up early, often before I even asked for a helping hand.
I just had a feeling you needed me,
she said every time she walked in, as if she was the caretaker and I was the child. The baby monitor would crackle to life, even when it was off, and on occasion it would play lullabies I didn't know, old, peculiar songs that made Lily whimper instead of sleep. I confronted Eliza on one occasion.
What was that song you were singing a little bit ago?
I asked her.
Oh, something special for little Lily,
she said, smiling creepily. That smile stayed with me. One morning, I pretended to be sick and stayed home. From behind the cracked nursery door, I heard her, whispering to Lily in a tongue that I didn't understand. Then, in English.
They never wanted you, but I do.
It felt like ice was sliding down my spine. Nate told me I was paranoid, a little sleep-deprived. She's been amazing with Lily, he said. That night, I reverse-searched for Eliza's number. Nothing. No full name, no background, no social media pages. A burner phone. I called the references from the flyer, all disconnected. Every last one. I should have fired her, but I needed proof, so I bought a nanny cam. The recording still gives me nightmares. 3:04 in the morning. Eliza is in Lily's room, holding her in her arms in front of the mirror and speaking into it.
She is nearly ready. We just need to get rid of the mother.
I forgot how to swallow. I pretended to sleep that night. When Eliza arrived, I got up quietly to watch her tiptoe into the nursery and close the door behind her. Barefoot and terrified, I crept after her with my heart pounding. I peeked through the old heating grate in the wall. Eliza was kneeling next to the crib. I watched as she opened something below the crib, a compartment I never knew existed. Inside were photographs of me while sleeping, showering, holding Lily at the hospital. She was watching us long before the flyer. I felt dizzy and backed away. The following morning, I told Nate what I saw. We waited for Eliza. She entered smiling, as if nothing was wrong. I questioned her.
Who are you? What do you want with my daughter?
Her smile stayed unchanged.
You don't remember me, do you? I was in the maternity ward. I was supposed to go with Lily. But they gave her to you. I'm here to take back what's mine.
Everything stopped. The room shrunk in size. Then she lunged for Lily, but Nate jumped on her. Together, we tied her to our living room chair and dialed 911. If it was some horror movie, Eliza would have unlocked some full psycho mode. But you won't believe how different it was in real life. It's like she realized and gave up too soon. Like something just snapped in her and she stopped putting up with the mask she was wearing so long. It was as if she was tired herself. Even when the cops came, Eliza cooperated like a harmless civilian. But she kept humming that lullaby as they put cuffs on her. Her fingerprints told the rest of the story. Eliza Montgomery, a former NICU nurse, lost custody of her infant daughter years ago after her mental health broke down. Her daughter died in a fire in a foster home. Since then, she had been targeting new mothers in our area, offering babysitting, leaving flyers behind. 3 babies had gone missing before Lily vanished. 3 families were destroyed. We were almost number 4. I don't want to know what Eliza did with those missing babies, or are they even alive? She had already given enough nightmare fuel for my entire life. Occasionally, I ponder how nearly we came to losing it all. I still look underneath the crib. I still unplug the monitor before bed every night. And sometimes, even now, when Lily is in her room alone, I think I can still hear that lullaby. But when I open the door, no one's there. Just Lily, smiling at the mirror. It was my first day at Lux, and I was assigned the storage room duty. "Nobody lasts long down there," Grayson mumbled, handing me the clipboard and never once looking me in the eye. "Something about those mannequins freak people out." And soon I'd know why. The storage room was a nightmare. This massive space with lights that kept flickering. Shelves stretched into narrow aisles that seemed to go on forever, and scattered upon them were the mannequins. Everywhere, standing in corners, hanging from metal hooks, or just body parts thrown into bins waiting to be put together. "Just sort them by gender and then by size," Grayson said, already backing away toward the stairs. "And try finishing before dark." Then he added, "Oh, and ignore any weird noises. Old building and all." The door slammed shut, and I swear it sounded like someone laughing at me. For the first hour, I sorted mannequins into sections, trying to ignore how their faces seemed to track my movement. The store's playlist booming overhead only made the silence between songs creepier. Then I heard it, tapping from somewhere deep in the room, like fingernails on metal. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped, holding a mannequin torso awkwardly in my arms. "Hello?" My voice cracked as it echoed faintly in the space. I peered around, listening to my heartbeat in my ears. Dead silence. Maybe some rats scurried behind the shelves. But then, what I saw made my heart drop. A mannequin, a male one, with the unsettlingly realistic face, glared at me from the end of the aisle. I knew I'd left it in the men's section. I remembered the exact spot. And yet, there it was, lurking quietly, as if waiting to pounce. "Pretty sure I moved you already," I muttered, grabbing its shoulders. That's when I noticed the eyes. They'd changed. Before, they were just flat painted eyes. Now they looked deep. "Don't spook yourself, moron." I scoffed at myself. I picked it up again, avoiding those eyes, and hauled it back to the men's section. By late afternoon, I was totally on edge. I'd found mannequins in places I definitely hadn't left them. A female one with a cracked face by the elevator. A child-sized one sitting on a shelf I couldn't even reach without a ladder. Each time I found one, my hands shook worse putting it back. During my break, I called up the stairs. "Mr. Grayson? I think someone else is down here." He appeared looking tense.
Nobody else except you has access today, Alex.
But the mannequins
are exactly where they've always been.
He cut me off.
It's just the light playing tricks on you.
Something in his voice made me pause. He knew. Whatever was happening, he knew. As closing time hit, the lights dimmed. I rushed to finish, desperate to leave. Then, all the lights went out. Total darkness. Not even emergency lights. I grabbed my phone, turning on the flashlight with trembling fingers. The beam hit a mannequin standing directly in front of me, the one with the glass eyes. I swung my light around. More mannequins surrounded me now, at least a dozen, arranged in a circle, all facing me.
This isn't funny,
I yelled, my voice breaking.
Mr. Grayson!
No answer. The store was closed. I was alone. Or that's what I wanted to believe. I tried the freight elevator. Dead. The stairs then. I'd get out through the stairs. The beam of my flashlight revealed the path was blocked. Mannequins stood shoulder to shoulder before the door, their blank faces somehow accusatory in the harsh light. They only move when you're not looking. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Every time I'd turned away, blinked, looked elsewhere, they'd move closer. My phone battery flashed a warning, 10% remaining. I backed against a concrete pillar, moving my light constantly, trying to watch all of them at once. An impossible task.
What do you want?
I whispered. My light flickered, dimming momentarily. In that split second, the mannequin with glass eyes moved. Just a twitch of its head, angling slightly to the left, toward the far corner of the room, where a human-shaped shadow stood that wasn't a mannequin at all. It was Mr. Grayson.
I'm sorry, Alex,
he said, stepping forward.
They need someone new. They always do.
What are you talking about? My voice was barely audible.
They let me go after I gave them you.
His laugh was hollow.
That was our agreement. 20 years down here, watching over them, and they finally chose a replacement.
You're insane, I whispered, but even as I said it, I saw his eyes, glassy, reflective, like marbles embedded in flesh. My phone died with a pathetic beep, plunging us into absolute darkness. I felt it immediately, movement all around me, the soft scrape of plastic limbs against concrete, the whisper of mannequin hands reaching out.
Don't fight it.
Mr. Grayson's voice drifted from somewhere in the darkness.
It doesn't hurt. Not really. You just become like them. Silent, watching, waiting for the next person.
Something cold brushed against my cheek, plastic fingers gently exploring. I ran blindly, crashing into shelves, mannequin parts raining down around me. My hands found a door, not the stairs, but the emergency exit to the alley behind the store. I slammed my body against it repeatedly until the lock gave way. Night air rushed in as I tumbled out, gasping, into the alleyway. I didn't stop running until I reached the main street, the store's neon sign still glowing in the distance. I never went back for my final paycheck, but sometimes, walking past high-end clothing stores, I glimpsed the mannequins in their windows, posed elegantly, dressed in $1,000 outfits. And I swear, one of them has Mr. Grayson's face now, its glass eyes following me as I hurry past. They're patient, these silent ones. They can wait. After all, I still need a job. Working the night shift at 7-Eleven was never something I listed on my bucket list, but money talks, and lordy did I need it. My coworker Mia had cautioned me about all the weirdos who come out at night.
Just keep pepper spray in your pocket,
she'd said while laughing. I laughed too. I wasn't worried about creeps. I can handle myself. The first few hours went by without much happening. A couple of late-night snackers, some drunken college kids rolling around laughing at the candy aisle, and a cat lady buying beer. She smelled of her cats. Around 1 a.m., the store had gone quiet. The humming fridge and the occasional click of the tilted surveillance camera reminded me of my existence from time to time. I leaned down on the register, arm tucked under my head, just for a minute. I promised myself, just a quick nap. A blast of cold air hit me in the face. I flinched, but didn't move, probably the AC kicking on. Then another gust rippled through, but this time wasn't just air. This gust carried with it a rancid refuse smell that made my nose crinkle. I opened my eyes and nearly shrieked. A man's face hovered inches from mine, grinning ear to ear, eyes wide like he was watching something hilarious unfold. I jolted back in shock. The man laughed, actually laughed, like a child who just popped out of a closet to scare a sibling.
Sorry,
He said between chuckles.
didn't know how else to wake you.
Feeling annoyed by his nonsense, I rudely replied.
Could have tried calling.
He tilted his head, nodded slowly.
Yeah, you're right.
There was something strange about him right away. He blinked too little, smiled for too long. His clothes were tattered, pale skin illuminated by the fluorescent overheads, and a black backpack slung over one shoulder that looked very heavy. Too heavy.
You buying anything?
I said in an attempt to push the moment back to something normal.
Not yet.
He said, drifting into aisles as if he had all the time in the world. I kept my eyes locked on him from behind the wooden counter. Something about him made my skin feel prickly, crawly even. He smiled randomly, as if he were having a private conversation with himself. And that smell, horrible, rotten smell, it followed him like a dog. He returned 10 minutes later holding a banana milkshake and a sandwich, placed them on the counter as if he were a child showing his parent his new favorite toy. I scanned him in.
Do you ever... I don't know how to say this without sounding crazy, but do you ever think that this store doesn't exist? Like, we're all part of someone else's dream, and that's why there seems to be no consideration given to anything we do.
I didn't have an answer. He smiled.
Sometimes I feel like I'm still asleep, still in the alley, still hearing her scream.
I stopped scanning. My stomach flipped.
Wait, what?
He chuckled.
The sandwich smells like someone screamed when they made it, like they put fear in the bread.
I didn't say anything. I just handed him his total. He paid with crumpled cash, his fingers brushing against mine. They were very cold. He shuffled over to the corner table and sat down, facing the wall, hunched over like a gargoyle. He dove into the sandwich, eating like he hadn't eaten in days. I tried to concentrate on restocking gum at the counter, not that it helped. I couldn't stop sneaking glances over at him. That's when I noticed. His backpack was on the floor next to him. The bottom of it was wet. Even though it was black, I could see the stains spreading outward. At first, I thought he spilled something. Then my mind blanked. Water, soda, anything. But then something inside me screamed at me. No, that's not soda. Then he caught my eye. His jaw was still moving, sandwich half gone, crumbs clinging to his shirt. His gaze was hollow, and his knuckles, my God, his knuckles were red and swollen, like he'd been punching concrete. Mud caked under his fingernails, dark and dry. The scent hit me once more, but this time it was stronger. It was definitely him. It was decay, death. I thought I might retch. He was done eating and stood up slowly. He picked the backpack up as though it weighed 100 pounds. I didn't want to look at him, but I couldn't help myself. Where the bag had been on the table were bloodstains. Small, but unmistakable stains from a hand that had to have been bloody. I felt my body lock into place. I couldn't move. I couldn't take a proper breath. He started for the exit now. Each step sounded in slow motion like a death march. The automated doors opened with a hiss. He stopped halfway through the doors. He turned back again one more time.
Hope she didn't keep you up,
he said, voice low and strange.
She wouldn't shut up all night.
Then he grinned bigger and more brightly than he had earlier, and he stepped into the darkness. I stared at the doors for what felt like hours, too paralyzed to move. Finally, I reached for my phone. I dialed 911 and relayed the entire story. His appearance, his backpack, the smell, the blood, the eerie comment. The woman on the phone told me to stay calm. I was anything but calm. 2 days later, I saw him pop up on the news. Arrest for murder. Woman found in an alley downtown, mutilated. She was a street worker from somewhere, bludgeoned to death, missing her head. which the cops found in his backpack. He was walking around with it for hours. They said he went into multiple stores carrying the severed head in his backpack, the same one that leaked onto my store floor. The next day, I quit. Since then, I haven't stepped foot in a 7-Eleven. But sometimes, when it's late at night, and I'm in bed with the lights off and suddenly feel a gust of wind on my face, I jump in fear, thinking it's him. The air at Camp Redwood Lake hung thick with humidity that night, pressing down on my skin like a damp blanket. Everyone was asleep in their cabins, but my best friend Brian had that mischievous glint in his eye, the one that always meant trouble.
Come on, Steven. Let's just see if the girls are still awake.
He chuckled. The wooden floorboards creaked beneath us as we slipped on our shoes. You just want to see Madison in her PJs, I teased, trying to mask my nervousness with a smirk. We slipped out the cabin window rather than risk the squeaky door, landing softly on pine needles. The night smelled of campfire ash and the earthy scent of the lake. Crickets chirped in rhythm with our footsteps as we crept through the woods. The girls' cabin was visible through the trees when Brian suddenly grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin.
Dude, look!
By the edge of the lake, a figure moved slowly in the moonlight. Mrs. Ritter, our counselor, dragging something heavy across the dirt path. It was large and looked disturbingly like a body wrapped in burlap.
What the?
I breathed, my heart hammering against my ribs.
Dude, that looks like a f***ing body!
Brian hissed, his voice cracking. We crouched behind a massive oak, barely daring to breathe. Mrs. Ritter, who had smiled so warmly while passing out marshmallow just hours earlier, heaved the sack to the edge of the water. Her movements almost looked rehearsed. But as she lifted the sack to dump it into the lake, the frayed end unraveled and a pale hand shot out, clawing desperately at the fabric. My blood turned to ice as Rosie, the counselor's assistant, emerged, gasping. Her face was streaked with mud and what looked horribly like blood. Her eyes were wild with terror. Mrs. Ritter reacted instantly, clamping a hand over Rosie's mouth, forcing her back down. Rosie's legs thrashed violently, her muffled screams barely audible over the lapping of the lake water.
We have to do something,
I whispered, my mouth bone dry.
No, she'll see us.
Brian clutched my wrist, holding me back, but I couldn't just watch. Rosie's eyes were bulging, her nails digging futilely into Mrs. Ritter's arms. Without thinking, I grabbed a rock and hurled it into the lake. The splash echoed across the water. Mrs. Ritter's head snapped up, her eyes narrowed as she scanned the tree line. Meanwhile, Rosie collapsed into the mud and coughed violently. But Mrs. Ritter spotted us, just a shadow of movement, but enough. She rose slowly, her voice unnervingly calm as she tilted her head and chuckled.
You shouldn't have been here, boys. I didn't want to kill Rosie. I swear, I didn't. But she made me do it. She made me.
The next thing, she lunged towards our hiding spot as we bolted, crashing through the underbrush.
The security exit! Mr. Blake's cabin!
Brian shouted over his shoulder. I could hear Mrs. Ritter behind us, closing in with unnatural speed, asking us to stop. Ahead, the woods were a blur of shadows and branches that whipped across my face. We had nearly made it, when suddenly, Brian's foot caught on a root, and he went down hard.
Get up!
I screamed, turning back. Before Brian could scramble to his feet, Mrs. Ritter was on him, bringing a rock down on his head with a sickening crunch. He crumpled instantly. I froze. A mistake. Something slammed into the back of my skull, and the world went dark. I awoke to throbbing pain, dirt in my mouth, and my hands bound tightly behind my back. Brian lay opposite me, blood matting his hair, his eyes glazed but open. Nearby, Mrs. Ritter was digging, the shovel rhythmically biting into the earth. She was humming something that nearly sounded like a lullaby.
You know,
she said conversationally, not looking up from her work.
I didn't want to hurt anyone.
She stabbed the shovel into the dirt and turned to us, her eyes wild and bloodshot.
But Rosie had it coming. She seduced My husband. I gave that girl everything. A job, a place here. And she threw it in my face, Stephen. I just couldn't leave her alive.
Mrs. Ritter knelt before me.
I'm sorry. You weren't supposed to pay for her mistake. But you saw it. And now you gotta pay too.
The rusty knife in her hand caught the moonlight as she pressed it against my cheek. I felt warm blood trickle down my face. My eyes darted frantically, searching for something, anything. Then I spotted it. Brian's pocket knife, half buried in the dirt where he'd fallen. "Please," I whimpered, slowly inching toward the knife. "Please, I don't want to die."
It'll be over soon, sweetheart.
My fingers closed around the knife handle. One swift cut and the rope gave way. Without hesitation, I lunged at Mrs. Ritter, tackling her from behind. She screamed as we hit the ground, but I slammed her face into the dirt, momentarily stunning her. "Run!" I yelled, cutting Brian's bonds. We staggered through the woods, branches slashing at our faces. Behind us, Mrs. Ritter's animalistic screams echoed through the trees as she chased, closing the distance with terrifying speed. The lights of Mr. Blake's cabin appeared ahead, salvation just yards away, but Mrs. Ritter caught Brian's ankle, yanking him down. Without thinking, I grabbed a metal lantern from the porch and swung it with everything I had. It hit her face hard. Glass shattered, slicing her cheek open. Her howl of pain was cut short as the cabin door flew open, and Mr. Blake stepped out, wide-eyed at the massacre. "What the hell is going on?" We screamed for help as he tackled Mrs. Ritter, pinning her thrashing body to the ground until the police arrived. At dawn, paramedics confirmed Rosie had survived, beaten, traumatized, but alive. Brian and I sat wrapped in shock blankets, our hands still trembling uncontrollably. Rosie, her throat bruised and breathing labored, reached weakly for my hand.
You saved me,
she whispered, her voice barely audible. It started with Airbnb, a charming country cottage that would save our marriage, Mark had said. Remote, romantic, just what we needed after months of silent dinners and separate beds, and I was totally for it. The smell hit me first as soon as we arrived, musty and sweet, like rotting flowers. The old caretaker woman who let us in didn't return my smile.
Do not disturb what isn't yours,
she instructed, pressing the key into my palm with ice-cold fingers. Her nails dug into my skin as she emphasized.
Some things in this house like being alone.
I followed her eyes into the bedroom. That's when I saw it. The cradle. Small and ancient, its dark wood polished by decades of touch. It sat in the corner like a spider waiting to strike, so out of place it'd send creepy chills down my spine. "Weird decoration," Mark muttered, dropping our bags. I nodded, mouth dry. Something about it seemed hungry. That night, I woke to Mark's breathing beside me, heavy and slow. Something else was breathing too, raspy, wet, coming from the corner. Creak. My body went rigid. Creak, creak. The moonlight slicing through the curtains illuminated the cradle, rocking gently, empty, but moving. My rational mind grasped for explanations. Uneven floorboards, air currents, too much wine. Creak. It rocked faster now, the motion too deliberate, too rhythmic. I opened my mouth to scream, but couldn't. I stared, horrified as it swayed, then abruptly stopped, as if whatever was rocking it had noticed me watching and hated it. At breakfast, Mark told me I'd been mumbling in my sleep all morning.
What was I saying?
Dunno, something like, it's empty, but it's not. While Mark hiked that afternoon, I walked near the cradle. I dreaded how it pulled me, compelled me to touch. I was running my fingers along the wood when I felt them, fresh scratches, gouged deep into the oak, like something had clawed its way out. I pressed my finger to one. It was sticky, warm. That night, Mark built a fire. We drank wine and talked about trying again, For the unborn we'd lost last year when a high-pitched cry shattered the moment. Unmistakable, impossible, coming from the bedroom. Mark's face drained of color.
You heard that too?
As we crept toward the sound, the crying grew more desperate. Wet, gurgling gasps between wails, like a baby drowning in its own tears. The bedroom door swung open on its own. Inside, the cradle was empty, but the crying continued, filling the room like poisonous gas. Then everything went eerily quiet for a few seconds before laughter started echoing, soft at first, then building until it screamed the morphed words.
Mommy! Daddy! Play with me!
Every light in the house went out simultaneously. In the pitch blackness, I felt something brush against my leg. Small, cold fingers, grasping. Mark's scream was primal. We fumbled through the darkness, crashing into furniture, desperate to escape, but the front door wouldn't open, and every window was nearly sealed.
The back door!
Mark hissed, pulling me through the kitchen. Behind us, something dragged across the floor. Slow, deliberate, a scraping sound like tiny nails on hardwood.
Mommy,
The whisper made my breath hitch.
please don't leave me alone again. I'm scared. Take me with you.
Mark slammed his body against the back door. Once, twice. On the third try, the wood cracked.
Again!
I screamed, joining him. My eyes kept flickering back to the shadows in the dark. The scraping was closer now.
Hurry! It's near!
I cried, shivering at the cold sensation that had kissed the whole of my body.
I'm freezing.
It whispered directly into my ear. Mark rammed the door again. This time it splintered open. We burst into the night, the frigid air burning my lungs, and ran blindly through the darkness, not caring about the branches whipping our faces. Behind us, the house seemed to pulse with sickly yellow light. Mark yanked open the car door, fumbling with the keys. The engine sputtered once, twice. I looked back at the house. In the upstairs window, our bedroom, stood a small figure. Even from this distance, I could see its unnatural smile splitting its face nearly in half. It pressed its tiny hands against the glass and mouthed something.
I'll find you.
The engine roared to life. Mark floored it, tires spitting gravel as we tore down the driveway. Neither of us spoke for miles. What was there to say? A week later, I couldn't stop thinking about the house, about the cradle, about what the voice had said. I raked the internet until I found the details. A small newspaper article from 30 years ago cited the cottage's owner had left her baby in that house, days alone in the cradle. By the time anyone checked, he was dead, starved and cold. They never found the mother, but her diary was retrieved, which told in great length how her illegitimate pregnancy ruined her life. It was the last entry that nearly chilled my blood. He won't be alone. I'll always send him someone to play with until I come find him again. I wept the whole day and showed it to Mark when he returned from work. He said he felt sorry, but we better put everything behind. But can you ever really put behind something like...
Emma's quite the storyteller.
Mrs. Hayes laughed, checking her diamond earrings in the hallway mirror.
Don't believe a word she says. Just going through a phase.
Mr. Hayes nodded, jingling the car keys.
She's a good kid, though, with an overactive imagination. Attention-seeking, the therapist calls it.
I forced a smile and adjusted my backpack strap. Their house was stunning. Modern art on pristine walls, furnitures that looked never used. That strange emptiness that comes with too much money.
We'll be back by midnight.
Mrs. Hayes promised, not quite meeting my eyes.
Numbers are on the fridge.
That's when I noticed her, 9-year-old Emma, at the top of the stairs in a blue nightgown, perfect blonde hair and eyes too devious for a child.
Hi, Emma. I'm Fiona.
I greeted cheerfully. She didn't smile back, just stared, tilted her head slightly, and went back to playing. Shy kid, I thought. But the moment the front door closed, the kid's posture flipped 360.
You shouldn't have come, Fiona.
She deadpanned. I laughed awkwardly.
Well, I'm here now. You want to show me around?
What's the point?
She shrugged.
You'll be dead soon anyway.
I gaped as she skimmed down the stairs, humming like she just commented on the weather. During dinner, Emma watched me from across the table, barely touching her food.
So, what's your favorite subject in school?
I asked, trying to break the silence.
Psychology.
She answered immediately.
I like to study how minds break.
I swallowed hard.
That's mature for your age.
That's what the others said too, before they left.
She replied, pushing her peas around.
Emma,
I said firmly.
Your parents mentioned you like to make up stories.
So do they. Like how they made up being my real parents.
Where are your folks then?
Her eyes darkened.
Buried in the garden. I watched Daddy dig the hole.
My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Just stories, I reminded myself.
Girls come to live in our basement.
She continued calmly.
I feed them scraps when Mom and Dad are sleeping.
I forced a laugh.
Let's finish dinner and maybe watch a Disney movie?
You don't believe me. No one ever does. Until it's too late.
I didn't believe her until I saw the scars. Emma was brushing her teeth when her dress slipped, revealing a network of thin, jagged scratches snaking up her arms.
What happened here?
I asked, genuinely concerned. She glanced down casually.
I did it.
You hurt yourself? Why?
To practice.
She whispered.
When I do it to you.
My skin crawled.
Enough, Emma. That's not funny.
I quickly washed her up and led her to her bedroom, choosing to remain silent. Just one night, I told myself. I could endure the little weirdo a little longer. Little did I know it would stretch far beyond that. As I tucked Emma in, my hand brushed against something hidden under her pillow. A journal. I immediately snatched it away and flipped through the pages. My blood ran cold. The pages were filled with disturbing drawings, stick figures holding knives, splashes of red crayon smeared across every surface. But that page stopped me in my tracks. A crude caricature of me, my head severed, red crayon dripping from the neck. I didn't waste a second. My mind raced with questions. Could the kid be in danger? Were the haze hiding something sinister? The basement door screamed for me. It was locked. I hesitated for a second, then reached for a bobby pin. With trembling hands, I managed to pick the lock. The basement was finished but oddly sparse. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed a patch of carpet that seemed newer than the rest. Under a workbench, I found a small box containing IDs and credit cards belonging to different women, and a missing persons flyer with a photo of a young woman, a babysitter, who disappeared 3 months ago. My heart raced as I pulled out my phone. No signal. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. Emma stood in the doorway, holding a butcher's knife in her hand.
I told you.
She snickered.
No one ever listens.
I pushed past her, running upstairs. I needed to get out, call someone. The front door wouldn't budge.
Stop running.
Emma said, following me slowly.
You'll be in a happy place. My parents will make sure of that.
I ran to the kitchen, grabbing the landline. Dead.
They disconnected when they leave.
Emma explained, swinging the butcher knife. I backed away.
Emma, stop it! You're sick!
And you're the cure. We do this every few months. Trap somebody disposable. See what happens.
We?
My voice cracked. Right then, I heard a car pull over in the driveway. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes are back.
Me, Daddy, and Mommy.
Emma whispered.
I started with Mom and Dad. Daddy didn't stop me. Said we had to protect the family name, the estate.
Heavy footsteps moved closer to the porch.
They like to watch the videos after.
Emma continued, eyes darting to a tiny camera in the smoke detector.
to see how long the babysitter lasts.
I heard the main door open.
Emma, you need help. Your parents are wrong.
I demanded.
You should hide. That's what the last one did. She lasted almost an hour.
I ran for the bathroom, locking the flimsy door. I could hear Emma outside, giggling.
She's in there, Daddy. Go get her.
The door handle rattled. I climbed into the small window, forcing my body through. I tumbled onto the lawn and ran toward the road, blood soaking my sleeve. The last thing I saw before jumping the cab was the Hayes' porch light flicking on, and two silhouettes stepping out on the porch. I made an anonymous 911 call to report the Hayes after that night. I'm still hoping to see their arrest in the news, but deep down I have this feeling. People with money can get away with anything. The bus screeched to a halt in the middle of nowhere. The brakes wheezed like a dying animal. I stepped out into the cool mountain air, took it in, and instantly felt eyes on me. Milena and Goran Karovic were standing a little too still, with smiles a little too wide. A lean, pale girl who looked like she has just recovered from prolonged sickness stood beside them. Her vacant, dark eyes kept scanning me.
Welcome, Amira. We are Mr. and Mrs. Karovic. And this is our daughter, Anna.
Her voice thick with an accent that wrapped around my name like fog.
Hope you have a nice time here.
The house was old. The wood of its bones creaked beneath my feet. I noted there were no mirrors on the walls, no clocks, only the sense of herbs and of something decaying, lurking underneath like meat left to rot on the counter. Dinner was awkward and heavy, the kind of food that sits in your stomach like a boulder. Mr. Karovic kept tapping his fingers the entire time we ate. It was making me annoyed, but I had to pretend with a smile. Milena pressed a cup of tea into my hands after dinner.
You sleep now. Tomorrow we show you the village.
I didn't want to drink it, but I promised myself I'll let go of my worries and enjoy my first solo eye trip. I was dead asleep when sounds of hushed voices woke me up. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then the words took shape, something low, guttural, rising and falling like a chant. I tiptoed to my door and crouched down to look out from the keyhole. The hallway was dark, except for some candlelight, and in that light, I saw them, Milena and Goran, circling Anna, forcing something into her mouth and chanting. They were chanting in that creepy language, and it made my skin crawl. I must have coughed or made a noise because they stopped and turned towards my door, but I held my breath until my lungs burned, and eventually, after many agonizing seconds, the chanting began again. Next morning, everything felt back normal again. Milena hummed while frying bread in pork fat, acting like nothing had happened. They even took me to a tour of the village, but it turned out to be quite disappointing to me. The empty streets, shutters pulled down on almost every window, no kids playing on the streets, made me even more doubtful. Did I choose the wrong host? Back in my room, I began looking for answers. I examined the space around me, trying to find proof of travelers before me who had stopped to stay with the Karovics. One drawer in the nightstand was stuck, and after a few moments of struggling with it, I finally managed to pull it out hard enough to pop it free. Inside was a stack of the same student-like photos of people like me, smiling faces beaming from a time when the world didn't look down on them with their fears of the future or obligations. As I flipped the stack, the pictures kept getting worse and worse, with their features becoming washed out like wet paint smeared over canvas. When I reached the last photo, just Milena, grinning, her eyes black as pitch, and written below, "She carries us all." My hands shook, and I realized something's very wrong going on here. That night, I spoke to Mr. Karovic.
A few responsibilities came, hence I have to leave early.
While forcing a smile. His grin widened.
Sure,
He said, slippery like his voice.
maybe you should go to bed early, to wake up early.
After a lot of struggle, I finally fell asleep at around 1 a.m. that night. In my sleep, I dreamt of Anna standing over my bed and her eyes glowing in the dark. I woke up choking, my sheets damp and covered in small, muddy handprints. I grabbed my phone, flipping the camera to face me, but the screen glitched. In the picture, my reflection stared back, but half my face was wrong. A second mouth stretched beside mine, another eye blinking just above my cheekbone. I dropped the phone with a gasp, but when I looked again, the image was gone, but I knew what I'd seen. Suddenly, a sound of chanting came again, this time louder, pulling me like a fish on a hook. I followed, creeping through the house and out into the cold. Behind the barn, torches burned in a stone circle, the villagers standing silent and watching. Anna stood in the center, her body limp and her eyes empty. Just then, Milena addressed the villagers, pointing at me.
Her youth is strong.
She murmured, stepping forward.
She can carry too. Bring her.
Hands grabbed me, dragging me into the circle where Goran smeared ash and crushed bone on my forehead. His breath hot in my ear said,
One gives, one takes, one stays.
The world tilted. My limbs turned to lead and my vision doubled. Anna's face swam in front of me, and then I felt her inside me. A second heartbeat, a whisper in my skull that said,
Let go. Be one.
But then I saw Anna's tears. They were real, terrified. I knew she didn't want this. I lunged, knocking over the bowl of fire. The embers exploded, screams tearing through the night. I ran, branches clawing at my skin, their howls chasing me.
You must carry us. We are nothing without you.
Milena shrieked. That's when I finally saw some headlights cut through the trees, a postal van. I stumbled into the road, my ankles screaming, my breath ragged. The driver's eyes bulged as I collapsed against his door. I sobbed.
Help me, please.
I woke up at the hospital 2 days later. The police took my statement, but their faces said that they didn't believe me. When they came back from the village, they shrugged.
No one by that name lives here.
They said.
The Karviks moved away years ago.
But I know what I saw, and when I checked my phone, one lost photo had survived. A blurry selfie, my face half melted into Anna's. Now, when I look in the mirror too long, something looks back. I can still taste the copper in my mouth from when I bit my tongue that day. The words, "I barely know you," had tumbled out before I could stop them, leaving Colin standing there, face twisted and hurt in front of hundreds of our classmates. I never meant to embarrass him like that, but his proposal came out of nowhere. The truth was, I really didn't know him. He was just that quiet kid from chemistry who'd barely spoken 10 words to me before deciding to flash a giant "Prom Amber" sign during the middle of the inter-school soccer match. Colin didn't go crazy at the rejection. He didn't cry or yell or hurl his flash mob at me. He simply turned around and walked away, shoulders hunched, but back rigid with dignity. I should have gone after him, told him it wasn't personal. Instead, I laughed with everyone else and continued enjoying the game. After all, it was supposed to be just another cringy high school moment that would fade like a minor bruise. I had no idea it was only the beginning of my worst nightmare. The first note appeared exactly 7 days later, folded neatly inside my calculus textbook. "See you at prom. I'll be ready." It read in barely legible handwriting that had sent a chill down my spine. I showed it to Caitlin and Maya during lunch. Both of them froze before brushing it off like it was a minor inconvenience.
Looks like someone can take a hint.
Caitlin snorted.
Whatever. Just the loser being weird.
Maya shrugged. But then came the texts. All of our phones chimed simultaneously during history class, drawing annoyed looks from Mr. Harrison. The message made my blood run cold. Pretty girls always dance before they fall. The school administration hauled Colin into the office immediately after we reported him. Jordan, from student council, told me Colin just sat there with a blank face, denying everything. They couldn't pin him due to the lack of evidence. It wasn't his handwriting or phone number, so he was let off with just a warning. That night, I double-checked every lock in our house before going to bed. Nothing happened, and as another week passed without incident, we started to believe it was over. We couldn't be more wrong. Caitlin called me sobbing 2 days before prom. Someone had slashed all 4 of her tires in the school parking lot. That same evening, Maya found her expensive prom dress cut to shreds on her bed. The fabric was scattered like rose petals across her comforter.
It's Colin.
She whispered, shivering like a leaf.
The psychopath's plotting a payback. Nancy told me the guys had fun with him in the bathroom.
I stopped sleeping through the night, started checking under my bed like I was 8 years old again. My parents dismissed my concerns when I begged for a new lock on my bedroom door.
It's just school drama, Amber.
Mom brushed it off.
It'll pass before graduation.
But it only escalated. Notes appeared everywhere. In my locker, my backpack, even taped to my car windshield. Texts arrived from unknown numbers at all hours, getting creepier by the second. Make sure the dress is red. It hides blood best. Some of them read. I began feeling eyes on me everywhere I went, lingering in the hallways, watching from across the parking lot, and most terrifyingly, through my window at night. The school installed additional security cameras and hired extra guards for prom night upon our insistence. The first hour was smooth. The gym looked spectacular with its twinkling lights and elegant decorations, but everyone was on edge, scanning the crowd. Colin wasn't there. For a little while, I felt relieved as we twerked and bounced and had fun. But then, the fire alarms blared, lights cutting out completely a second later. Then, the fog machines roared to life, pumping out thick clouds that burned my throat and stung my eyes. Someone grabbed my wrist in the darkness. I screamed before realizing it was just Caitlin.
We need to get out now.
She yelled over the deafening alarm. That's when the firecrackers started exploding under tables, one at a time, as genuine panic swept through the crowd. Everyone pushed desperately toward the exits. I lost my friends in the stampede. I was pinned against the wall when I felt something wet splatter my arms. Looking up, I saw crimson letters dripping down like blood on the wall before me. It was never about the dance. My lungs seized up as panic took over completely. Someone dragged me outside into the chaos of flashing lights, screaming parents, and crying students. Then, the devastating news spread through the crowd. Colin had a perfect alibi because he had been streaming games online all night. If Colin was innocent, then who was responsible for all this? 2 days later, they found a mask in the girls' locker room, along with Maya's destroyed phone and a burner. The police traced the SIM card to its source. It was Janelle, Colin's freshman sister. I'd barely noticed her before. She was just another shy girl who ate lunch alone in the library corner, much like her brother. They arrested her at home. Her bedroom was pure nightmare fuel. School newspaper clippings, photographs of me and my friends with our eyes scratched out, and a detailed timeline on a whiteboard. My name was circled in red, over and over and over. When they put her in handcuffs, she didn't resist, just giggled like she had expected it.
They wounded my brother and thought they could walk away scratch-free.
She told the officers calmly. She was sent to a psychiatric facility, so she can get well and start all over. Honestly, I'd put it behind too. Until this morning, I opened my locker and found a neatly folded note inside.
You never danced, so I guess you can keep your legs.
I haven't told anyone about the note. Who would believe me? Janelle is locked up. It couldn't possibly be her. But right now, sitting in my bedroom with every light blazing, I can't shake the feeling that someone is watching me, and it's giving me anxiety.